How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Princeton University. Look at that. Today we'll be reading the book Amar Bondhu Rashed, or in English, My Friend Rashed. The book will give you a small glimpse on the war that has given birth to an incredible country thanks to its incredible sacrifices made by the people of Bangladesh for preserving their culture, their language, and their people. I feel that the liberation war of Bangladesh isn't highlighted enough. Bengali is the sweetest language, but people should know the history about it. So, without further wasting any of your precious time, let's begin this incredible journey where we'll be reading about this incredible boy whose name is Rashid, a boy who made a difference. I still remember the day Rashid first came to school. The class just had started. Sir had opened his register to take the roll when a boy came and stood at the door. There was a dripping wet paper in his left hand. He held it carefully and looked into the class. He looked as if he had lost a goat or something and was looking for it inside the room. After standing there for a while, he finally decided to come in. Majid sir looked at him with a frown and said, "Hey, who are you? What do you want?" He didn't reply, but put the paper on Sir's table and wiped his hands on his pants. Slightly surprised, Sir asked, "What's this?" "A paper." "I can see it's a paper, but what is it?" "I don't know." He glanced vaguely at the class. "The office gave it to me." Sir briefly looked at the paper over. "An admission paper? You want to get admitted to this class?" "I don't know." "What do you mean by you don't know?" Sir scolded. "How did you get this so wet?" "It fell in the drain." "The drain?" Sir made a face and pulled his hand away. "It's not dirty, sir. I washed it." "You washed it?" Sir looked at the boy in surprise. After looking at him like this for a little while, "What's your name?" "Laddu." "Laddu." The whole class started to burst into laughter. Sir said angrily, "Quiet. Absolutely quiet." Once we had quieted down, Majid sir asked the boy again, "What's your real name?" "I don't have one." "You don't have a real name?" "No." "Your name is just Laddu." The boy nodded his head. "Nothing before or after that?" "No." Sir looked at the boy again in surprise. Then he said, "Can just Laddu be anybody's name?" "No," Laddu replied thoughtfully. "Then?" "Put something else with it." "Yes. What should I put with it?" "Mohammed, Laddu, Mohammed." "Alright," the boy agreed. Sir regarded the boy with amazement, then suddenly slapped the table and said angrily, "Never. No one in my class can go by the name of Laddu Mohammed. You tell your father to give you a real name." The boy scratched his head and said, "There's no use, sir." "Why not?" "Dad won't give me a name. Why won't he?" "He's too lazy. Besides, he's kind of crazy. I have a brother and he doesn't have a full name either." "What's his name?" "Chom Chom." Sir shouted us and we roared with laughter all again. "Quiet. Be quiet or I will bash your heads in." After we had stopped laughing, Sir looked at the boy and said, "Your mother?" "I don't have a mother." "Oh." Sir suddenly became quiet. He tapped on the table for a while and then said, "Then should I give you a real name?" The boy brightened. "Alright." Majid sir studied the boy for a few minutes, then said, "Okay then. You tell your father that tomorrow you'll be given a new name." Then sir looked at us and announced, "Tomorrow each of you write down and bring a nice name. Will you remember to do that?" We nodded and we would remember. After sir left, we went to size up the boy. Whenever a new boy came to class, he had to be sized up. Who knew, maybe someone would come who was such a good student that he would always get 90 or 95 out of 100 in all subjects and make our lives miserable like Ashraf did. Or maybe the new boy's father would turn out to be a district magistrate And if we beat him up for some reason, his father would send the police to get us the way Masum's father did. Or maybe he would be somebody who was such a bully that he would absolutely eat us alive, like Kader did. You can't tell anything from before, so the boy needed to be sized up. I went to him and asked, "Are you going to be first in the exams?" The boy made a face and said, "Are you crazy?" "Then what will you be?" "I'll fail." "In all subjects?" "In all subjects?" "Yeah," Dilip said worriedly. "How do you know that from before?" "What's not to know? Why do you think I came to school? To fail?" "Yeah, if I fail 2 years in a row, I don't ever have to study again. Dad said so." Fazlu asked wide-eyed, "You won't ever have to study again?" "No." We looked at one another. Fazlu's eyes narrowed in jealousy. He said, "If you fail, won't your father beat you up?" The boy chuckled and said, "My father never beats me up. He's sort of crazy, you know." "What does he do?" "He talks and tells stories. Discusses things." "With you?" "Yeah." "What does he talk about?" "Usually politics." "Politics?" We were astonished. What was this kid saying? His father discussed politics with him? I asked in surprise. "Do you understand discussions about politics?" "Why not?" "What's not to understand?" We all looked at this boy carefully. He had a head full of messy hair. His shirt was missing buttons and fastened with a safety pin. He was wearing blue pants and was barefoot. He had a fairly dark complexion and dreamy eyes. Look at him. Anybody would think he's just a normal kid, but he wasn't normal at all. He didn't have a mother, and his father talked about politics with him. And he didn't even have a real name. None of us admitted it, but we all were just a little bit jealous. The next day, each of us had bought a new name. We had chosen after the class had started. Majid sir gave us a long, impressive lecture on the necessity of having a full, nice name. Sir loved to give us lectures. Then he made the boy stand in front of the class. I think he was a little embarrassed that everyone was making such a big deal out of him. Sir said to us, "Now each of you has to read out your names one by one. Everybody else voted for the name you want, and we'll use whichever name gets the most votes." So we began to read out our names, and everybody raised their hands to vote. Ashraf wrote the names and the number of votes for each name on a piece of paper. After going on this for a while, we realized that it wouldn't work. The two names that had the most votes were Rabindranath Tagore and Qazi Nazrul Islam. So then, Sir had to make a new rule that we cannot use famous poets or people's names. Then the most popular name turned out to be Robert Brown. Then Sir had to make another rule. We cannot use foreign names. Fazlu, who was sort of a stubborn type, had to start an argument with Sir about what was wrong with a foreign name. On top of that, the boy called Laddu, looking shy, had to say that he didn't mind having a foreign name. Then Sir gave another lecture on the importance of having a name from one's own country. He lectured the nation, the culture, history, etc. Sir really loved giving lectures. Once he had finished the lecture, he said, "Forget the voting. You just read out the names and I'll choose one I like." So we read out names we had. Sir wrote down the ones he liked on a piece of paper and read them out. The first one was Ali Zakaria. Sir studied the boy for a while and then said, "No, if your name is Zakaria, you have to have a sort of long face. Your face is round. This name doesn't suit you." The second name was Kaisar Ahmed. Sir shook his head again and said, "Kaisars have curly hair. Your hair isn't curly. It looks like a bird's nest since you haven't combed it. And it's not curly, this name won't do." The next name was Hassan Ferdos. Sir liked this name a lot. In fact, he almost decided on it. But at the last moment, he changed his mind. To be a Ferdos, you have to have pale skin. In our class, there was already a boy called Ferdos Ali, and he was absolutely black. But Sir still didn't agree. He read out the next name, Rashed Hassan. Sir really liked this one. He read out the name in a couple of different tones of voice and then said, "This is a good name. The name has a kind of character. What do you say?" We had no idea how a name could have character, but we nodded our heads all the same. Sir asked, "Who chose this name?" The shyest boy in the class, Ronju, stood up. Sir said, "Very good name. Where did you get it from?" Ronju said softly. We could barely hear him. "My uncle goes by this name when he writes poems." "So this is a pen name?" "Yes." "What's his real name?" Gojonofor Mia. Gojonofor Mia. Sir nodded. "Poet Rashid Hassan. Sounds much better than poet Gojonofor Mia." This name is quite something else. It's not usual. "Your uncle's right. You can sit." Ronju quickly sat down. Majid sir called Laddu to him. When he went, Sir put his hand on the boy's head and said, "Today, the 11th of September, 1970, I, Majid Shorkar, class teacher of section class 7, section B, do I give you the name liked by all, Rashid Hassan." Nobody had told us what to do, but we all shouted together in joy. That made Sir even happier. He nodded his head and said, "From now on, I'll use your new name." You reply, "All right?" The boy nodded. His sir called, "Rashid Hassan?" "Yes." "Very good." Sir looked at us and said, "If any of you ever calls Rashid Hassan Laddu, I will break your head. From now on, his name is Rashid." Fazlu tried weakly, "But sir, he's had the other name for so long." "Let that be. From today, it's Rashid. He has a new name. Doesn't he have to get used to it? No one is to call him Laddu. Is that clear?" We very reluctantly nodded our heads. Once Sir left, Fazlu immediately told Rashid, "I'm not going to call you no Rashid Fashid. That kind of gentlemanly name doesn't come out of my mouth." I nodded and said, "Laddu is better. Your face looks like a laddu and laddu kind of face. I'm going to call you Laddu." Rashid gave a toothy smile and said, "Whatever you want." Class Captain Ashraf said seriously, "I'm going to tell sir. I'm really going to tell him." "Go ahead." Fazlu showed Anaf his thumb and walked away. If Rashid himself didn't have an objection to being called Laddu, then what was the point in the class captain telling sir? Besides, the class captain Ashraf would go all red and pretend to be angry, but he would never complain to sir, like the other class captains did. Ashraf had a good heart. His one problem was that he was too good in his studies. He would come first in exams with his eyes closed. Not only did he always come first, he always talked properly, wore clean clothes, and even kept his hair combed. Just look at him. You could tell that he was kind of the goody-goody type. But Rashid didn't have a problem like that. I knew we would become a friend pretty fast. We quickly discovered that Rashid was a mischievous rascal. We had decided to call him Laddu and he didn't had a problem with that. But when we really called him Laddu, he would never reply. He would pretend that he hadn't heard us. He would ignore us, sit there with dreamy expression until we called him Rashid. Then would give a huge smile and look at us with big eyes and say, "You calling me?" Fazlu and I both got all mad and decided that no matter how hard he tried, we would still call him Laddu and not Rashid. After a week or two, we found him with a surprise that, along with everyone else, we were also calling him Rashid. Finally, we gave up. He really liked that name, Rashid Hassan, and if we used it, he would become so happy. So we decided that we might as well call him that. In a couple of days, we realized that Rashid wasn't like every other kid. He didn't talk too much, but that didn't mean he was dumb. He had announced that he would fail 2 years in a row and had not had to study anymore. But that wasn't going to be as easy as it seemed. Even if he failed in all subjects, it looks like if he was going to pass in English. How is a kid of his size couldn't know such hard English was a mystery to us. Usually those of us who came from rich families, read comics and stuff, had learned good English. Rashid didn't look like one of those kids. His father was a carpenter or an electrician. Definitely not a rich person. Rashid told us himself one day. Since his father didn't know English, Rashid would sometimes read and explain English newspapers to him. He would even use a dictionary and spell out words, and then somehow end up learning English. He could easily say hard things like freedom of speech and economic repression in English. There were other surprising things about Rashid as well. Anybody could say anything to him, and he would never get angry. On his first day at school, Fazlu made a poem out of him. Daddy's laddu in a test la gaddu total faddu. Not exactly an amazing poem. But if your name was Laddu and you had to hear that poem every 30 seconds, then you definitely might get a little annoyed. But not Rashid. Every time Fazlu said that poem, Rashid would laugh out like crazy, as if it was the funniest thing he had ever heard in his life. Fazlu tried for a morning and then gave up. If somebody wouldn't get mad when you tried to annoy him, then why waste your time? You could say whatever you like to Rashid, but you couldn't ever touch him. He wouldn't really mind if anybody gave him a little push or something while fooling around, but if anyone pushed or shoved him when they were angry, he would turn around straight away and shove him twice as hard. He would do it with us all the time, but one day he did it to Kader. Kader was our class bully. He had failed so many times that he was in our class. Otherwise, he would probably have been in college by now. He was the only boy in our class who would have his beard shaved off at the barber's. Not only his beard, he also shaved his armpits. We never bothered Kader. Sometimes he would come up from behind and slap our heads and swear at us, and we would have to take it quietly. One day, for no reason, he pushed Rashid in his chest and said, "Hey Faddu, I'll smash you into a pulp." Rashid turned at once and shot Kader with all his might. My name isn't Faddu. Kader never imagined that anyone from the class would ever dare to touch him. Caught unprepared, he lost his balance and fell over the bench and tumbled to the ground. It took him a few seconds to understand what had happened. When he finally did understand, he caught up with eyes red and angry like a mad pig's, and he would have torn Rashid apart if the maths teacher hadn't come up in then. At tiffin break, Kader held Rashid against the wall and said, "Hey Faddu, my name isn't Faddu. Messing around with me, I'll stab your guts out." Even in that position, Rashid laughed and said, "Go ahead and try." Kader took this as a humiliation and slapped Rashid with the back of his hand, more of an attempt to humiliate Rashid than to really hurt him. Immediately, Rashid's foot came up like a spring, lightning fast. He kicked Kader in the stomach and so hard that Kader let him go and sat down. At this point, you were supposed to run away, but Rashid didn't even try. Instead, he went to Kader and started to lecture him like an adult. Fighting is not right. Fighting does not solve problems. This was the last straw for Kader. Getting up with a scream, he jumped on Rashid like a tiger. Kader was a head taller than Rashid, weighed twice as much, but was at least 1.5 years older. Kader could pass as a real thug, and as in comparison, Rashid was still a little kid. It looked as if Rashid wouldn't stand a chance in fight with Kader. But when fighting, more important than physical strength was courage. Rashid didn't lack in courage at all. In fact, he didn't even look slightly bit scared. If he wanted to, Kader could squash him into a pulp. But Rashid didn't know that. Every time he took a punch, he would give him one straight back. Kader even had to back away once or twice when he had got hit badly. But Rashid got beaten up too bad for words. At school, little scuffles happened all the time. But real big fighting didn't occur too often. When a real fight started, we would often go and fix things ourselves. If things would go really bad, we would call a teacher. That day, if it had gotten a little worse, we would have to do that. But we managed to pull Kader and Rashid apart. Apart from a few people had to hold back Kader, he was huffing and wheezing in anger like a mad bull. Rashid was a different matter. He spit out some blood and said calmly, as if nothing had happened, "Fighting is not right. If you really want to fight, then you should fight with someone your own size. If an elephant-sized guy like you wants to fight, you should find another elephant-sized guy, not me. It's a shame." We had thought that matter wouldn't go to the teachers, but somehow the headmaster found out about it. He sent out for the two of them. We hung around his room and tried to figure out what was going inside. The headmaster had two canes. Apparently, one was from India. It was called Shillong Special. The other one was from Garo Hills and it was called Garo Special. The school bearer Kaliput oiled up them with the turpentine oil every Friday. If anybody fought, the headmaster would first give them the beating with the Shillong Special and then he would listen to what they had to say. Whoever was at fault got the Garo Special. We had been pretty sure that Kader would get the double dose of the Garo Special that day. But he had came out of the headmaster's room smiling and happy. He hadn't gotten the Garo Special. Rashid had refused to say a word to the headmaster. If Rashid had told the absolute truth, Kader would have been in big trouble. Everyone at school knew Kader. The headmaster probably just waited for the opportunity to beat him. In the evening, Rashid's face swelled up pretty badly. He pressed his face here and there and asked me, "Hey Ibu, does it show?" "Yeah." "Does it really show?" "Yeah." "Oh, that is too bad. This is too bad. What is..." "The way my face is swollen up. If you get fights into like a dummy, of course, that's what's going to happen. Are you going into trouble, get into trouble at home?" No. Why should I get into trouble?" So then, Rashid pursed his lips for a few seconds and said, "I hope Kader doesn't have any problems." Kader? Kader? Why would Kader have problems? "Kachu bhai really has a temper." "Kachu bhai? Who's that?" "He lives in our neighborhood. 36-inch chest. The thugs from the NFS7 once tried to stab him in the stomach and the knife just slipped away. He eats 4 raw eggs every morning." "Are you friends with him?" "We live in the same area. Of course we are friends. He really likes me because I give him news about politics." Rashid looked worried that I got scared. The next day, Kader didn't come to school. Kader didn't exactly come to school all that regularly anyway, so nobody thought anything about it. But Rashid looked very worried. When Kader didn't come to the next day either, Rashid got even worried. That was when we all started to get scared. I asked Rashid, "What happened to Kader?" "I don't know." "Then you ask Kachu bhai?" "Yeah, he won't tell me anything." What do you think? Do you think he killed Kader?" Instead of laughing this off, Rashid said seriously, "Can't say anything. Kachu bhai is really hot-headed." "Did you tell Kachu bhai about Kader?" "I didn't want to, but he made me." Rashid sat around worried. We got chills up our spine. What a terrible thing. Did Kader get murdered because he beat up Rashid? We all sat around, not being able to concentrate on our classes. What would have happened when the police came? How was Kader murdered? Where had Rashid Kachu bhai dumped the body? And Kachu bhai who eats 4 eggs every morning. But the next day, Kader came back to school. At the beginning, we really didn't recognize him. Kader used to have a very fashionable hair. Between classes, he would have seriously combed it. The hair on his top of his forehead used to stick up like a pine tree, but not anymore. His head was bald and shining like a ball. We were all shocked. You wouldn't believe that Kader would shave off all of his hair unless you saw it with your own eyes. Fazlu raised his eyebrows and said, Your hair, Kader said heavily. "Shut up, Shala." Fazlu didn't have the guts to say anything anymore. I said softly, "We thought you had been murdered." Kader gave me a poisonous look and snarled, "Say one more word and I will murder you." Dilip said, "Why did you shave all of your hair? Is your father okay?" "Shut up, Shala," followed. Rashid said, "You're lucky it just went over the top of your head. Kachubai really has a temper." Kader started to say something, then stopped. He looked at Rashid the same way same way somebody who is scared of leeches would look at leech hanging off his leg. There were both fear and disgust in his eyes. He obviously didn't even have want to touch Rashid. After that, Kader never bothered Rashid or us again. On Thursday afternoon, after the school, I asked Rashid, "Want to come up to our neighborhood?" "What's in your neighborhood?" "You're there." "Who?" Me, Fazlu, Dilip, Ashraf, there too. Fazlu reminded and Kader. I laughed and said, Kader's never going to come near you again. Rashid nodded and said, That's true. I asked again, Want to come? What do you guys do? We play. What do you play? We play robbers and there's a factory and we play in that too. Factory? What factory? I said seriously, we haven't decided yet, cars or medicine, but for now all we make is biscuits. Rashid said in surprise, You guys can make biscuits. How do you make them? Play biscuits? No, real ones. Dilip made a face and said, Biscuits or junk? You mix sugar with wheat and heat it in a stove and you think you get biscuits? I said, Is everything going to happen at once? These things take time. Dilip made a face again and said, Tastes like sweet bread. Yuck. Fazlu had once eaten all the biscuits himself. He got angry at Dilip and said, What do you mean yuck? Have you ever eaten one? Soft and mushy like bread, dirty, black. I stopped him and suggested next time we have to use baking soda. If we ever use baking soda, they will be crunchy. Fazlu added, We have to use flour instead of wheat. Then they will look nice. Dilip was still making a face. He shook his head and went on. Smells like kerosene. Annoyed Fazlu said, Would you be quiet? Always criticizing everything. Even after Dilip's criticism, Rashid was very enthusiastic about making biscuits. He had said, if you really make good biscuits, it would be very useful, wouldn't it? How? How all the poor kids in the country can eat them for breakfast. Then we remembered that Rashid was a political character. He always thought about the people of the country. So we also nodded seriously and agreed, that's true. Fazlu, a little too serious, said, Then we should make medicine. People need medicine and nothing's going to happen if you eat biscuits. But if you get them sick, you do need medicine. Dilip as usual made a face and asked, You guys will make medicine? You guys. What's wrong with that? Medicine for what? Fever, cough, runny nose and headaches? Fazlu added, and upset stomachs. How will you make it? I said solemnly. We'll ask Shafiq Bhai, he'll tell us. Dilip became quiet. There was nothing Shafiq Bhai couldn't do. So what choice did Dilip have other than to stop talking? Shafiq Bhai lived in our neighborhood. He was in college ISC or BSc or something. Whenever we needed anything, we would go to Shafiq Bhai. He always arranged something for us. When we had done play, Shafiq Bhai has made us mask. Man, that was a great play. When we had opened a circus, Shafiq Bhai had painted our cat and made it into a tiger. It was an absolutely real tiger. If only it wouldn't go meow. When we made a laboratory, Shafiq Bhai had gotten us magnets and litmus paper. We did so many science experiments then. Dilip said, Let's go to Shafiq Bhai. Let's go. We headed for Shafiq Bhai's house. Shafiq Bhai was standing near his house wall and talking to Oruapa. Uruapa studied for her IA or BA or something at the local women's college. She lived next to Shafiq Bhai. I have noticed that the two of them really like to talk to each other. When she saw us, Oruapa said wide-eyed, Oh look, it's the losers team. We pretended we hadn't heard her and walked on. The last time we had a football team, Oruapa had stayed up late in the night and made us jerseys. Every team had scored so many goals against us, we became known as the loser team. So we stopped playing football. Oruapa reminded us about that whenever she saw us. She called from behind, How long? Till you guys set a world record for losing goals. I said seriously, stop fooling around, Oruapa. When did I fool around? I went through so much trouble to make you those jerseys and then you go and lose every game. Did you ever score a goal? Ever? Shafiq Bhai rescued us. He said, Why are you bothering them so much, Oru? They didn't score goals this time, but they will next time. It's not their fault that the other teams foul so much. We nodded our heads vigorously. Shafiq Bhai looked at us and said, or asked, What's up with you? Where are you going? We came to see you, Fazlu added, for a special reason. Dilip looked at Oruapa out of the corner of his eyes and said, "For a special, secret reason." Oruapa raised her eyebrows at us. "That means you won't say it in front of me." We shook our heads no. Shafiq Bhai told us, "Come inside then." We followed Shafiq Bhai into his house. Oruapa called us from behind, "Next time, don't come to me for the losers team jerseys or I'll break your heads." That probably wasn't the best thing to do. But what else could we have done? Shafiq Bhai lived in his uncle's house, not even a close uncle, some kind of distant relative. Shafiq Bhai had fixed up a little room for himself near the front of the house. We went to the room and explained the whole matter of opening a medicine factory for the good of the country. Shafiq Bhai listened to us seriously. I could bet on it that if Oruapa was here, she would laugh and joke about it and make fun of us. Fazlu said, "Shafiq Bhai, you have to tell us how to make medicine." "Of course," Shafiq Bhai nodded, "but I have never made medicine before. I'll need to look into a couple of books first." "Okay, then do that." "I will. When I will find out, I'll let you know. What kind of medicine do you want to make? Homeopathic or allopathic?" I scratched my head. "Which one is better?" Fazlu said, "Homeopathic tastes better." Dilip said, "But allopathic is more useful." "Then let's go with allopathic." Shafiq Bhai asked, "Tablets or capsules?" We looked at one another and Dilip asked, "Which one's easier?" "I think tablets." Okay, we'll start with that then." Alright. We talked about the same details for a while with Shafiq Bhai and we were about to leave when he said suddenly, "The country is in a bad state, you know that." Before we could say anything, Rashid replied, "I know." "What do you know?" "Yahya Khan has closed down the National Assembly. West Pakistan won't give the Bengalis power." Shafiq Bhai looked at Rashid in surprise. So did we. Rashid was talking totally like an adult. Shafiq Bhai said, "How do you know that the Bengalis won't come into power?" "West Pakistan survives by exploiting us. If we get power, then they won't be able to exploit us anymore." I think Shafiq Bhai got even more surprised then. He said that, "I don't think I've seen you before." I informed him that he was new to our class. "What's your name?" "Rashid Hassan." I said, before his name was Laddu. "Laddu?" Rashid laughed a little and said, "Now my name is Rashid." I said, "Yes. Rashid always talks about politics with his father." Shafiq Bhai asked again, "If Sheikh Mujib doesn't come into power, then what do you think will happen?" It's civil war." Fazlu chuckled and quipped, "What's a civil war? A fight inside the house? Mom against dad?" "No, silly." Shafiq Bhai said, "Civil war is when a war happens inside the country. If East Pakistan fights with the West Pakistan, then it's a civil war." Dilip asked fearfully, "Will there really be a civil war?" Shafiq Bhai said slowly, "I think there will. I think West Pakistan will never let Mujib come into power. Even though Sheikh Mujib got more seats, they still won't let him come into power. Because then they won't have the power to themselves anymore. But the Bengalis won't take that lying down. They won't take that at all. What will they do? They'll protest. Actually, movements have already started. Non-cooperation movements. Pray that will work. That they will give up that power." Rashid shook his head and they said, "They won't. Not for anything." We left Shafiq Bhai's house very seriously. There were serious jokes ahead for the country. It wouldn't do us any laugh and joke now. We walked till we came near our house. In front of the house, the wall's paint was peeling off. We climbed the wall, stepping into our little holes and here and there, and then we sat on top of it, with our legs swinging. We were sitting and thinking about the country when Ashraf came with a bat and ball. A few other kids came out and from the nearby houses, and then we started to play a cricket match in the field and then forget about the country and the problems pretty soon. As the evening came along, Rashid said he had to go. Rashid was hopeless at the cricket. He couldn't bowl or bat, and even while the fielding, he would just stand there and think about things only he knew about. The ball would go right through his hands without him realizing he had to catch it. I asked Rashid, "Where do you live?" "Very far away, near the bridge." "Then go. It will be dark by the time you get home." I'm not going home for a long time yet. Where are you going to go? There's a torch procession at night. You are going to a torch procession? Yeah, since I'm young, they won't give me torches. So I have to go early and talk them into it. Fazlu narrowed his eyes and said, "Oh, if only I could go with you." Rashid replied, "If you want, then come along." Fazlu sighed deeply. Dilip said, "Fazlu, going on a torch procession? That will be the day. Won't his father beat the hell out of him?" Fazlu nodded sadly. Ashraf said solemnly, "You shouldn't take part in processions until you have grown up. Political parties will take you down the wrong path." Again, Rashid talked like an adult. You have to get on the path first before you can decide which path is right and which one's wrong. Before leaving, Rashid left with his school books with me to take to school the next day. Ashraf went home with his bat and ball. Dilip and Fazlu left as well. The others had already gone, and I sat alone in the field for a while, then headed home. Shafiq Bhai's room was dark, which meant he wasn't home. Who knows, maybe he had gone to a torch procession like Rashid. At Oru Appa's house, I saw Oru Appa and her mother standing the veranda and talking. When Oru Appa saw me and she said, "Hey Ibu, where are you going with your new books?" "They aren't mine." "Whose are they?" "Rashid's. He went on the torch procession, so he left them with me." "What are you talking about? Such a little kid on a torch procession?" "Yes." When he goes home, won't his father beat him up?" "No, Rashid and his father are very good friends." "Sounds like fun. It wouldn't be too bad having a father like that. What do you say?" Rashid said his father is sort of crazy type. "What do you mean, sort of?" "I would say completely. If he sends his little kid on a torch procession." I was leaving when Oru Appa called again. "Hey Ibu, want a candy?" I softened a little bit at the offer of the candy. Oru Appa wasn't a bad person, but I thought she was a little nuts. When I went to the veranda, she thrust some candy into my hand and said, "Try them, they're really good." Oru Appa's mother inquired, "How's your mother, Ibu?" "Yes, auntie. Tell her to come over one day. I don't find time to go get out of the house these days." "I'll tell her, auntie." Oru Appa said so too. "Let me ask you something. Will you give an honest answer?" I started to sweat. Here went Oru Appa's teasing. I asked fearfully, "What?" "Do you like me?" I swallowed and answered yes. "Will you marry me?" "Get out of here. Always joking." "When did I joke? I'm seriously asking, will you? I'll cook for you. When you grow old, I'll pick out the grey hairs for you, will you?" "Cut it out." Oru Appa's mother said, "Why are you bothering the boy?" "Who said I'm bothering him? Your son-in-law, mother. See if you like him. You'll have to cook fish heads for him." "Ibu, do you eat fish heads, don't you?" "Oru Appa, you and your teasing. You'll see, I'll take care of you very well. I'll get you candy every other day. Will you marry me?" Oru Appa's mother smothered a laugh and said, "Why are you bothering Ibu? Let him go, it's getting dark." After auntie went in, Oru Appa started to have even more fun. She brought out her head and near my face and said, Look at my face. You have an ugly face." "Why would you have an ugly face?" "Then why won't you agree? As if you're really going to marry me. Why won't I? You're so old and I'm so young. Besides what?" "Besides, I know who you're going to marry." "Who?" "Shafiq Bhai." Oru Appa jumped up and looked around, and then she grabbed me by the hair and hissed, "If you dare to tell that to anybody, I'll break your head." "Alright, I won't. But tell me, I am right, aren't I?" "Quiet. Be quiet, you naughty little rascal." I gave you a toothy grin. Finally, I had found something to get used with Oru Appa. At night, a torch procession went by our very close house. There were thousands and thousands of people, looking eerie with their torches. I looked around Rashid for a while, but I couldn't find him. It's not like I was supposed to find him in such a crowd. Even after the procession left, the slogans rang in my ears. There were a lot of slogans. Among them were very nice. My Desh, Your Desh, Bangladesh, Bangladesh. Not bad. If we became separate from Pakistan and named our country Bangladesh, what a beautiful name. Bangladesh, a country of our own. Sometime in the middle of March, Rashid bought a flag of independent Bangladesh. It was a green dark flag with a red circle in the middle. In the middle of the circle was something yellow. I couldn't quite tell what it was. Fazlu asked, "What's that yellow thing that looks like a bird?" "No, dummy," Rashid said with a laugh. "Why would it be a bird? It's the map of independent Bangladesh. Look at it again carefully." Once Rashid had pointed out to us, it really did begin to look like a map. Rashid said that the person who made the map didn't do it right. It was supposed to be golden. Golden Bengal, you know. We started to stare at the flag in awe. It was an awesome flag. Holding it in our hands, we felt a kind of excitement. "Our very own flag," I asked Rashid. "Where did you get this?" Instead of replying, Rashid laughed mysteriously and said, "He, I have everything. This is going to be our country's new flag." We stared open-mouthed in astonishment at the flag. We just couldn't believe it. We were really going to be a free country. We would have our own separate flag. In Urdu classes, we wouldn't have to read out lines like "Ek kutte mati mein lata hai" anymore. Then there were a lot of excitement everywhere. Non-cooperation movements were going on all the time. At the beginning, I didn't quite understand what it meant, but Rashid explained it to me on the 3rd of March. There was supposed to be a meeting of the National Assembly. On the 1st, Yahya Khan stopped that, and Bhutto and Yahya Khan were the best of friends. And whatever he said happened. The National Assembly's meeting was supposed to be drafted the constitution of the country. Now that won't happen. Sheikh Mujib called a non-cooperation movement. They were called non-cooperation movement because no one would cooperate with the Pakistan government anymore. Now they want the country running on Sheikh Mujib's orders. We were speechless with excitement. I asked, "That's what's going on the country?" "Yeah, now Bangabandhu's seeing." "Bangabandhu? Who's that?" Rashid laughed and said, "You guys don't know anything. Now everyone calls Sheikh Mujib Bangabandhu." We said the word a couple of times. It was too little deep, but it sounded very nice. "What's Bangabandhu seeing?" "He's seeing what Yahya Khan is doing. If he sees that Yahya Khan doesn't give the power up, he'll kick him out. We'll become liberated Bangladesh immediately." I never used to read newspapers before. These days I read them with interest. It took a day for newspapers to come from Dhaka to our little town, but the news was always hot. It seemed as if the processions and shootings happening every day in Dhaka, 1 or 2 people were dying every day from bullet wounds. We were hoping that within a couple of days Bangabandhu would kick Pakistanis out of the country and we would have become independent Bangladesh. Then one day Rashid brought out some bad news. Apparently, Pakistan's military president Yahya Khan had come to meet Bangabandhu and he had brought Zulfikar Ali Bhutto with him. They might give Bangabandhu power and the National Assembly would start again. "Oh no," Fazlu said. His face went dark. "Then we won't get our independent Bangladesh." Rashid answered solemnly, "If they really want to give up power, then how will they? Independent Bangladesh's beautiful flag." Rashid scratched his head and said, "But they're really bastards." "Really? What did in November when there were a cyclone? What did they do? A couple of 100,000 people died in the cyclone, and the bastard Yahya Khan didn't even come to see them. He went to China and then went back to his own country. Really? That's Maulana Bashiana really yelled at him, remember?" We didn't know about this and we nodded seriously anyway. Rashid said seriously, "What Maulana Bashiana said was right." "What did he say?" "He said that some have the 6 points and some have 11 points, but I have only 1 point. This nation must be free." Fazlu's eyes shining, clapped his hands and exclaimed, "Then nobody can stop independent Bangladesh." "Why not? Don't you know about Maulana Bashani's has pet genies?" "Genies?" "Yes," Fazlu nodded. "They bring him all the news." "News of what?" "What's going to happen in the future. Genies know everything from before and they must have told Maulana Bashani that Bangladesh will be liberated. What Maulana Bashani says is never wrong." Dilip, a little startled, asked, What's a genie? Don't you know what a genie is? Haven't you ever heard of genies and ghosts and stuff like that? Well, yeah. But what are genies like? Fazlu thought about it and asked for a while, then replied, I think genies are Muslim ghosts. Dilip asked fearfully, ghosts can be Hindu or Muslim? I think so. Do they have rights? Killings? Fazlu scratched his head and replied, I guess so. Do ghosts die then? Fazlu really began to look worried. He thought about it for a long time and said, if they have killings, then I guess they must die. People die and become ghosts. What do ghosts become when they die? Fazlu suddenly got angry. Would you shut up? Dilip didn't want to shut up. But right then, we heard slogans, a big procession heading our way. There was a huge independent Bangladesh flag at the front and the slogan was, Joy Bangla. This was the new slogan. We had never heard it before. One person said the first part, then everybody said the second part, like Yaya's skin, pull it off clean, and my desh and your desh. Bangladesh, Bangladesh. But this had only one part. One person said Joy Bangla and everybody said Joy Bangla. It was an awesome slogan. Somebody saying it made us think that the country was really becoming liberated. This time, we too followed Rashed with the procession and shouting Joy Bangla at the top of our lungs. When we came near the market, Rashed pointed out at us and Manzil to us. From the second floor, somebody was peeking out through a gap at the curtain. Who's that? I'm sure it's Ashraf Ali. How do you know? How do you know? Who else could it be? See, he doesn't have the guts to stand out in the open and watch. He's peeking through the curtain like that. Why doesn't he? He is such a huge procession. How would he have the guts? Don't you know Ashraf Ali has 3 wives? What happens if you have 3 wives? Rashid got very annoyed and said, you guys don't know anything. If you have 3 wives, you are an illiterate fanatic. Or the fanatics, Jamaat-e-Islam, Nazim-e-Islam, and they're on the Pakistani side. Don't you know that? Oh. We had walked all along the procession up to Khan Bahadur's house and when Rashid stopped again. I asked, I bet Khan Bahadur's hiding and watching. Watching what? The procession. He's a Pakistani minister. He can't stand with the idea of liberated Bangladesh. The next couple of days were very tense. If Yahya Khan and Bhutto really gave Bangabandhu all of Pakistan's power, then Bangladesh wouldn't be liberated. It would have stayed Pakistan. But Rashid kept insisting that wouldn't happen. Yahya Khan was a scoundrel, but Bhutto was 100 times worse. The whole thing was just a ploy. They actually had other intention. They would never give Bengalis power. We were hoping that was true, that the meeting would break up and Bangabandhu would kick Yahya Khan and Bhutto's butts. Get out of here. Go and suck your own thumbs in Pakistan. From now on, it's our own independent Bangladesh. Nevertheless, in our little town, Bangladesh was already independent. There was a liberated Bangladeshi flag at every house and every store. I see pictures of Bangabandhu wherever I went. Bangabandhu's speech could be heard everywhere. This time the battle is the battle of freedom. We were all hoping for just one announcement. And then we would have become independent Bangladesh for good. No more studying Urdu at school. On the 25th of March, I woke up in the middle of the night. There was a lot of yelling and shouting around everywhere. People were running around the house and something was being announced on the mic outside. I got out of the bed and went to the stand in the veranda. Mother and father were standing in the dark and I asked fearfully, what's happened, father? He didn't reply. I asked again, what's happened? He said slowly, the war has started, my boy. The military have attacked Dhaka. Thousands of people are going to be dead. Now they're fighting. Who's fighting? The Bengalis, police, EPR, students. A man on a rickshaw went by shouting excitedly over the mic. Hear all, a liberation war has started all over the country. The Pakistani military have attacked the innocent Bengalis with all of their forces. Thousands of dead bodies now lie on the streets of Dhaka. The brave police and the EPR are trying with all of their might to defend our country from the wrath of the Pakistani military. There's war all over the country. Liberation war. The man's voice slowly started to fade away. Once they had woken up, everybody went to stand outside. The streets were crowded with people. I had a strange feeling in my stomach, fear, terror, excitement, and with all of that, a strange sensation of joy. Bangladesh would be liberated. I barely got any sleep that night. I woke up very early in the morning. Everyone was sitting in front of the radio, their faces dark. First, Yahya Khan gave a speech. It was in English, so I didn't understand anything. The way father kept shaking his head and told me it must be pretty bad. Mother asked, "What he's saying?" He said it's all Sheikh Mujib's fault. The country was about to be destroyed, but he somehow saved it. He has to be gravely punished. Where is Sheikh Mujib now? He said that he's been arrested. Who knows what's true and what's not? Mother sat there pale-faced. After Yahya Khan's speech, somebody began to give him an announcement. There was a curfew at that time. If anybody went out, they would be shot, etc., etc. Usually the people who talk on the radio talk very nicely, but this time it sounded as if they were bought from the guy from a jungle or something. His pronunciation was so bad that I could have thrown up. Annoyed father said, "Turn off the radio, will you? Turn it off." I jumped forward and turned it off. I went outside and found that there weren't too many people out. The people were there, all standing around the radios here and there, trying to listen to BBC and Radio Australia. Since I didn't understand English, I wandered around for a while, and then on the wall my legs were swinging. A little while later, a procession came by. In procession, the people usually walk, but in this one they were practically running. This must be what they call fierce processions. Near the end of the procession were young boys, holding up rifles, bullet bells hanging from their waists. How did the boys get the rifles and guns so fast? Would there be a war now? The thing they call civil war? I was trembling in excitement. How the day went by, I don't know. Just rumors and rumors. Nobody knew about the excitement was going on. Everybody had a different rumor. Once we heard that tremendous fighting was going on, the Pakistanis were almost surrendering. Another time we heard that the Pakistanis had taken over Dhaka city and that there were thousands of dead bodies lying everywhere. We had no way of knowing what was true and what wasn't. They didn't say anything on the radio. Akashbani, Calcutta, stopped all of the programs and they just kept playing the song. Amar Shonar Bangla. I think the outside world didn't know anything either. The day somehow went by like that. At night, there were new rumors. Some were good, some were bad. We couldn't tell which one to believe. At night, somebody from BBC said that the situation in Dhaka was really, really bad. They were killing everybody, students, teachers, ordinary people. No one knew the exact number. But a horrifying massacre had taken place. The next afternoon, an unbelievable thing happened. Something from Chittagong radio, somebody called Major Ziaur Rahman announced that the Bangabandhu was fine. With him as leader, Bangladesh's liberation had been declared. Now the liberation war was going on. There was nothing left to fear. We all screamed in joy. The moment we heard this, it meant that Pakistanis weren't just the killing away. Our army was fighting back. We breathed heavily in excitement. Who would win the war? Who? We were bursting with fear for the person called Major Ziaur Rahman. He spoke about Bangabandhu over and over. Surely then the Pakistanis couldn't have arrested Bangabandhu. Bangabandhu himself told told everyone how to fight. Then what was there to fear? The week passed away day by day. Slowly we were getting all the news. The first bit of the news was the worst. The Pakistanis really had arrested Bangabandhu. The other news wasn't so bad either. On the 25th of March, in Dhaka, thousands of people had been killed. The war had started to die down significantly. While Yahya Khan and Bhutto were pretending to talk with Bangabandhu, then thousands of Pakistani forces were airlifted in. Then after the cold calculation, they attacked. Since they didn't let Bengali forces keep any weapons, the police had done most of the fighting in Rajar Bagh. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands were fleeing Bangladesh to go to India. All of the countries of the world were observing the situation with interest, but none of them were marking any moves to stop Pakistan. The Pakistanis were just ruthlessly killing people and killing people. At the beginning, our town had a vibrant excitement, but now the excitement had been replaced with a kind of fear. At school, a training center had been opened for the freedom fighters and the boys would train there. Now that had closed down. The leaders and the ones who used to give speeches with voices that trembled with enthusiasm were nowhere to be seen. Apparently, everybody had gone underground. There was no police in town. One day, right in the middle of the afternoon, a huge robbery took place. From home, we could hear sounds of shouting. Altogether, throughout the whole town was a feeling of terror. The Pakistani army took over large cities. They would come to our little town any day now. Everyone began to leave the town and head for their villages. I asked father one day, everybody's leaving for their villages. He didn't say anything. Will we go too? He gave a deep sigh and said, where will we go? Village home. He laughed weakly and said, now is there anything left of the roads? Is there any way to go? Have you ever heard what the state of the country is in? One day, Dilip's father came to our house late at night. Dilip's dad taught with father in college, and we called him uncle. Normally, Dilip's father was very handsome. Once there was a play, he acted as Shiraj-ud-Dullah, and he looked as if he were really a king, but now he looked a little weird. His hair was messy, he had a stubble, red eyes, and it looked like he hadn't slept for a couple of days. He told father, Aziz, we're leaving tomorrow. Father said, really? Yes, from what we are hearing, we can't stay here anymore. Father nodded. Uncle continued. There was no guarantee that on anyone's life anymore. If you're going to be Hindu or Awami League, then you don't stand a chance. How can I take such a risk with my children? Father asked, how will you go? By bus up to the river. Then we'll cross the river by boat and walk from there. How long till you reach the border? I don't know, for sure, a week to 10 days. 10 days? Uncle said pale-faced. What will happen to my little boys and girls? Only God knows. Father told him, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll have to come after this. Uncle lowered his voice and said, I'm not telling anybody. You're the only person I told. Keep an eye on the house if you can. Father shook his head. I'll keep an eye on it? Uncle shook his head and tried to laugh. I know we will lose it all. I'll be happy if we just survive. After he had given father all the papers and stuff, Uncle embraced father and almost started to cry. He said in a broken voice, please pray for my children. I will. Have faith in God. God will not tolerate such injustice. When Uncle was leaving father, he asked again, when will you leave tomorrow? Morning, early morning. I thought that I would wake up very early, but somehow it got late. I jumped up. Had Dilip and all left by then? I got out of the bed and ran for their house without washing up or anything. How would it be if they left without me seeing them ever once? When I got there, I saw that they hadn't left yet. Everyone was outside and there was 2 rickshaws in front of the house. They would be leaving right then. When Dilip saw me, he ran to me. His eyes were red. He wiped his nose, face and mouth with his sleeve and said, we are becoming refugees. Refugees? Yes, the people who do not have any home are called refugees. Your home is right there. It's here. A little later, it won't be our home anymore. We'll have to sleep on the streets and we'll live on Chira. Chira? Yes, only Chira. Dilip looked bewildered. He suddenly began to cry again. He said, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to India. I didn't know what to say. Suddenly tears came to my eyes. Dilip tried to desperately stop crying and said, the military will kill everyone who is Hindu. Now where will we stay? I told him when the country is liberated there won't be any Hindu Muslim. By then we'll all be dead and gone. Why? Because we are Hindu. If they stop us at the street, then we'll say we are Muslim. Dad fixed our names all for all of us. Muslim names. I picked mine myself. What is it? Rakibul Hassan. I looked at Dilip. My real name was Rakibul Hassan. Nobody remembers my real name since everybody calls me Ibu. But Dilip remembered. Suddenly, Dilip put his arm around me and burst into tears. He sobbed. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. Why should you die? Oof. I know we are all dead. All of us. The military will kill everybody. The military will kill us all. They'll kill us all, then they'll kill you too. They killed my uncle. There was Shonzada, and they killed him too. I know they will kill us all. Dilip kept sobbing. Dilip's father came and took his hand and led him away. Auntie came and patted me on the head and held me against her for a moment. She looked different for some reason. I couldn't understand why. Dilip's sister Shiradi was also wearing a sari that day. She looked at me and tried to smile. Then wordlessly, they all got into a rickshaw. They weren't carrying too many things, just a few small bags, a bottle of water. Dilip was tightly clutching into a book, and I wondered what the book was. At the rickshaw, as it took off, I suddenly realized why Auntie had looked different. There wasn't any sindoor on her forehead, and so nobody would be able to tell she was Hindu. Standing there on the street, I told myself over and over again not to cry. But then I cried anyway. Tears were running down the cheeks, but I wasn't exactly sad. I felt a kind of rage, a terrible rage, a terrible, terrible rage. The military came to our town on the 30th of April. By then the town was almost empty. There weren't too many people on the streets and many of the stores were closed. The few people who were still left had fear written on their faces, a kind of suspicion and terror. Father's face had also begun to look worried. When I wasn't around, he would talk softly to mother and shake his head. He had all kinds of worries about what would happen when the military arrived. The day the military arrived was like any other day, blue sky, clear day, warm breeze and dry dust, flying around and 11 around 11. A rumor started to spread that the military gunboat had come to the river bank. Thousands of the military were getting down on the gunboat and their faces like monsters. I was kind of curious and wanted to see, but father warned me seriously, don't you dare leave the house. So I didn't leave the house. I sat by the window and stared out of the street. The street was empty. There wasn't any people. There wasn't even a rickshaw anywhere. In the afternoon, I saw Khan Bahadur walking down the road with two people. It looked like they were standing there and waiting for rickshaw. But where would they get a rickshaw now? After a while, they started to walk again. It looked like they had headed for the river. So Rashed had been right. They were genuinely Pakistani collaborators. But I had to admit that Khan Bahadur had guts to go and to see monsters like Pakistani military. After a while, the sound of the shooting suddenly started. It was coming from far away. But there was no doubt that it was shooting. Then in the same way, it suddenly stopped. After that, there wasn't a sound. Father closed all the doors and windows. We sat quietly inside the house. Father paced back and forth. Mother sat quietly. Neither of them said a word. There was a knot in my stomach, and every second it seemed like an hour. Around 3, somebody knocked on the door. Father fearfully opened the door and to find Rashed standing there. Father asked in surprise, "What's this? What are you doing here?" Rashed came and said, "I'm very thirsty." I bought him a glass of water. He drowned the whole glass and looked at me and remarked, "It's so hot outside." Father questioned, "How could you leave the house on a day like this? Go home quickly." "I'm going." "Why they worry about you at home?" "No." Father looked in surprise at Rashed and then looked at me. Rashed stared at the ground for a little while, then suddenly looked up and said, "The military killed Khan Bahadur." Father jumped in shock. I gasped. He said, "What? What did you say?" Rashed looked down and said again, "The military killed Khan Bahadur." How do you know?" "I saw." This time Father absolutely jumped up. "You saw?" Rashed nodded. "Where?" "On the riverbank." Father couldn't say anything for a while. He just stared at Rashed in astonishment. A little while later, he calmed down to ask, "Why did you go to the riverbank?" "To see the military." "Were you alone?" "Yes. I hid behind the coconut trees on the side of the road." "You saw them kill Khan Sahib with your own eyes?" "Yes." Rashid's face ashen, looked from father back to me and father again. I asked, "Weren't you scared?" "Yes." "How did they kill him?" "They shot him. Khan Sahib was walking along with his two other people when two of the military stopped him. They talked about something with him, and when Mr. Khan tried to walk past them, both of them lifted their guns and started to shoot. The two other people tried to turn and run away, but they got shot too." "Did they die right then?" "I don't know. Their three bodies were lying on the street, and the military people kicked them away on the side of the street." Father, his face pale, asked, You saw all of that with your own eyes?" "Yes." "You're so young, you saw this." Rashid nodded again. I saw that he was trembling slightly. He asked, "Can I sit here for a while?" "Go ahead." Rashid sat quietly down. The look in his eyes was a little strange, as if there was something he couldn't really quite understand. He sat there for a long time and then went away in the evening. The military took a long time to come down from the riverbank. First, one team came crawling forward, aiming their guns. They came for some distance, then spread out and then took positions. Gun aimed and lay there while the next team came. When the next team came close, the first team crawled forward again and took new positions. The second team came forward, and it looked like if they weren't gonna take any risks, in case anybody suddenly attacked, then they would be ready. It took them nearly 2 hours to come the 2 miles from the riverbank to the town. In this time, they killed whoever they saw. They started with Khan Sahib and his companions. Then they killed around 10 more people on the street. Some of them were literally going to the market. Some were running away from the military, and some were just sitting on the street and resting. The military made up their camp in a school. The scoundrels put up a huge, disgusting Pakistani flag there. At night, every now and then, the sounds of shooting can be heard. We could not get the idea who was being shot at or why. We huddled together all night. The next morning, Rashid came again. Father said in surprise, "You went out again?" Rashid nodded. "Any news?" "Yes. Ashraf Ali went to the military camp a little while back." "Who's Ashraf Ali?" "The Pakistani collaborator, Jamaat Islam, 3 wives." I asked, "Didn't the military kill him?" "No. He went with a big Pakistani flag. He was wearing a cap and shouting Pakistan Zindabad, so the military didn't kill him." I said, "They should have killed him." Father looked at me with wonder. The next day, one after the other houses in the town were looted and set on fire. I sat at home and watched the smoke rising. I heard screams, not screams of terror, but of joy. Dil's house was looted on Wednesday. In the afternoon, Ashraf Ali came with 2 of the military and a few other people. All of them were wearing caps. These days, whenever I saw caps, first the 2 military circled the house a few times. Then for no reason, I pushed at here and there. Finally, they kicked the front door open. Those guys were strong as an ox, and the 2 military went in. Behind them, Ashraf Ali. For a while, noises came from inside the house, as if things were being broken. The 2 military and Ashraf Ali came a little later. One of them was holding Dilip's tape recorder. Dilip's father had loved to listen to music, and the other military guy had a box. I couldn't tell what was inside it. Ashraf Ali didn't have anything. He came out and declared to all of the people standing there, "This Maulon has fled to India. Now his belongings are of Ganimot. Now his belongings." Before he could finish, the people in the caps ran shouting into Dilip's house. They pulled out things out of the house. I saw someone running away holding the wall clock under his arm. I would have seen that so many times, so that on that clock in Dilip's house. A few people together pulled out Dilip's drum of rice. Some people were standing crowded together on the street. The military told them to loot the house as well. I didn't know whether they wanted to or not, but nobody had the guts to say no to the military, so they fearfully entered the house. And a little later, I saw them enthusiastically looting the house. Mother watched through a gap in the curtain at the window. She said softly, "How can you tolerate this, God? How?" Curfew was from the evening. In the afternoon, Rashid came. Father asked, "Do you have any news?" "Yes." "What news?" "They have burned the MP's house." "Where is the MP?" "Underground." "They didn't find him." "They found his son-in-law and shot him dead. The dead body is still there." "Oh, the bullet spins when it goes into the body. Is that so?" "Yes." "At the front there is a hole, but at the back there is a huge one because the bullet spins as it goes through the body." Father swallowed hard and said, "Oh." Rashid nodded. "Yes, the bullets are made of lead. When they hit the body and it falls apart because lead is soft." "Oh." "Up till now, the military have killed about 100 people and captured around another 100. "Oh." "They will also kill the ones they captured." "How do you know?" "They gave everybody a shovel to dig with. Each person will dig his own grave. Once they are done, they stand next to the grave and they get shot." "How do you know?" "I saw. You can see from the bushes next to the school." Father just looked at Rashid in wonder. I asked, "Don't you get scared?" "Yes, I can't sleep at night." "Then?" Rashid sat there quietly. Father said kindly, "Go home, Rashid. It's curfew a little later." At night, I heard father saying softly to mother, "I never imagined boys of Ibu's age would be able to talk so easily about killing people. Like it's so simple. Did you?" Mother didn't reply. Father said again, "Why did this happen? Why?" Mother still didn't reply. "God, what have you done to this country?" "What?" I heard mother crying softly. I had never seen my mother cry before. I felt as if my heart was breaking. One day Shafiq Bhai went to join the freedom fighters. But nobody knew that if the news got out that Shafiq Bhai's uncle would be in big trouble. As far as everyone knew, Shafiq Bhai's father was not well. So he had gone home. But I knew the truth. I found it in a different way. I had not seen Oru Appa in a long time. After the military had gone from town to town, there were never any young people on the streets. No boys, no girls. One day, mother sent me to Oru Appa's house for a book called Kamnama. The book told about dreams and their meanings. Mothers had been having bad dreams for the past couple of days and wanted to know what they meant. When they saw me, Oru Appa called, "Well, Ibu, I haven't seen you in a while. Have you joined the Rajakar or something?" "Rajakar? What is that supposed to mean?" "You don't know? Which planet are you on? Don't you know that the military have formed a Rajakar troop? Boarding, eating, looting are all free. At the end, they pay wages, give your name in. Don't joke around with me." Oru Appa suddenly changed the topic and said, "Hey Ibu, tell me the truth. Have I become as fat as a pig?" I looked at her. "Fat? You look thinner. Why don't you say anything?" "No, Oru Appa, you haven't become fat. I'm always hungry. Got it? I want to eat whatever I see. That day, I ate a whole banana tree." "Get out of here. Since when do people eat banana trees?" You can. You can cook the pulp inside. If you marry me, I will even cook it for you." Cut it out. Oru Appa didn't bother me too much that day. Suddenly, she looked around and whispered to me, "Can you tell your Shafiq Bhai something for me?" "What?" "Tell him that today evening." She stopped and said, "Better than that, let me write it down." "Okay." Oru Appa took a piece of paper and began to write. "You could go to Shafiq Bhai yourself." "Are you crazy? The place is crawling with military and I'm going to go out." I remember that there weren't any young people on the streets anymore. No boys, no girls. Only kids and the old people. I took Oru Appa's letter and went to Shafiq Bhai's house. I kind of wanted to read what she had written, but it was wrong to read someone else's letter. So in the end of the day, I didn't. Shafiq Bhai never used to go to home before, but these days people of his age stay at home 24 hours a day. Shafiq Bhai was sitting with his legs on the table, intently reading a small red prayer book. He had stubble of a beard and pretty long, looked as if he hadn't cut it in a while. When he saw me, he asked, "What's up, Ibu? Oruapa sent a letter for you." Really? He didn't look too enthusiastic, but I knew inside that he was very eager. I handed over the letter. He put it in his pocket instead of reading it. I was sure he would read it once I was gone. Shafiq Bhai asked, "How many khalmas do Muslims have?" I asked, "4. What are they?" "Kalma Taib, Kalma Shahadat, and I couldn't remember anymore. Shafiq Bhai pretended to be dumbfounded and shook his head. "Still don't know. You're in for a lot of trouble." "What trouble?" "When the military stop you and they first ask you, Bengali or Bihari. If you say Bengali, then they usually kill you. If you're lucky, then they don't kill you. Then they ask if are you Muslim or Hindu. If you say Muslim, then you are going to have to say how many khalmas there are. If you can't, then there's either a bullet in your chest or your bayonet in the stomach. If I can, then they'll make you take your clothes off to see if you have been circumcised." "Cease, sick." "Why are you calling me sick? Call the Pakistanis that. Don't you see I'm keeping a beard?" He took out a cap from his pocket and put it on, then removed his glasses and said, "Now what do I look like?" I laughed and said, "Like our school's bearer." "No, silly. I'm Talebul Alim, student of madrasa. The military sometimes let the madrasa students go." "Why are you dressing up like this?" Shafiq Bhai suddenly became serious. Absent-mindedly, he took out Oruapa's letter from his pocket and stroked it a few times. Then he put it back, muttered, "I have to get out of here." "Where will you go? To become a freedom fighter?" Shafiq Bhai quickly turned and looked at me. "Don't you dare tell anyone. If people find out, it will become a disaster, alright?" I nodded. "The road I use probably won't have any military, but I'm just getting prepared in case I get stopped. When it's a question of life or death, you don't have to take any risks." "Shafiq Bhai." "What?" "Will there be Joy Bangla?" "You mean, will Bangladesh be liberated?" "Yes." "Of course. Do you have any doubts?" "If you say so, then I won't. I don't know how many people will die for the liberation, but this country will be liberated. It has to be." Shafiq Bhai stared at his own hands with a kind of ferocity in his eyes. I got a little scared watching him. A few days later, when I went to look for Shafiq Bhai, he was gone. I knew he had joined the freedom fighters. Just thinking about it made me excited. Oh, if only I could go too. I went to Oruapa's house. She was sitting on her bed absent-mindedly, head on her knees. When she saw me, she said, "Ibu, come here." Oruapa looked sad. She didn't joke about marrying me that day. She said slowly, "Ibu, why did it happen like this?" "Like what?" "This living, day by day. After each day passes, I think, at least I'm still alive." I really wanted to say something to comfort Oruapa, but what could I say? I thought it after a while, then said, "Oruapa, what?" "All the freedom fighters have gone to fight. Someday Bangladesh will be liberated and everything will be alright." "Do you really think so?" "Yes, Oruapa, it will." "Will we ever go to college again?" "You guys will play football. You lose all the games and come back looking all sad. We'll buy candy from the store." "Yes, Oruapa." Oruapa pulled me into her arms. Her eyes were shining with tears. Rashid came to see us that afternoon. The two of us sat on the wall, legs swinging. A little later, Fazlu joined us. The three of us sat quietly looking at the street. People were walking on the street again, and rickshaws and cycles were there too. But it still wasn't like before. I sat quietly for a long time before asking Rashid, "Any news of the country?" "Yes." "What?" "Liberation war has started big time. Teams are being formed with 3 weeks of training. They're giving stun guns and grenades and let go. Stun guns, yes. What are they like? Small. They can be folded and hidden. Automatic, and if you pull the trigger, the bullets keep coming out. They come out with cartridge clips. If one finishes, they will have to put another one. And grenades? Grenades are bombs. You will have to pull the pin out of with your teeth and throw the grenade. 3 seconds later, it explodes. Boom. Those military bastards don't have a chance. Rashed took a piece of paper out of his pocket. Take a look at this. What? I made a list. List of what? A list of the collaborators, the people who are against Joy Bangla. I looked at the list. First was Khan Bahadur's name, then Ashraf Ali, then a few more names I didn't recognize. Next to some of the names was written Muslim League. Other names had Jamaat-e-Islam. Others had Islami Chhatro League Shongsho. And others had random opportunists. Everybody's address was there too. Rashed explained, you know why there's a cross next to Bahadur's name? Because he's dead? Yes, the military killed him. What are you going to do with that list? When the freedom fighters come, I will give it to them. The first job after the liberation will be to execute the traitors. If you don't execute them, then what? Then after 10 or 20 years, they'll bring back the Pakistanis. Oof. How would that happen? It happens, I've read it in the books. We stopped talking. If he really had to read about it in the books, then I couldn't argue with him about it anymore. And everybody knew that the Rashed was a political person. It wasn't surprising for him to read books on politics instead of screams from the haunted house. Rashed was quiet for a little while before he said, now we will have to finish this list. Then we have to make a map. Map of what? Our school. The military have camped there. When the freedom fighters attack, we have made a map, remember? Fazlu looked at us wide-eyed. Remember? I remember last year we used to play treasure hunting day and night. One team would hide the treasure and the other had to look for it. The map would show where the treasure was hidden. We had to carefully make the map of the school for that. Rashed heard all of this and his eyes shining. He wanted to just know. Where's the map? Fazlu and I scratched our heads. Our things were never where they're supposed to be. Fazlu said, I'm sure Ashraf has it. Yeah, I nodded. Ashraf did most of the work of it. Remember, he measured everything onto the graph paper before even drawing it. Yeah. Where the pond is, where the library is, where the Jamrul tree is. Then he remembered how annoyed we were at Ashraf. He always took things too far. Rashed clapped his hands together. There's nothing to worry about if we have that map. Now, all we had to do was mark where the bunker is, and the trench and the arms depot. Then, when the freedom fighters come, then what? Then they'll use this map to fight. Really? Yes. Rashed looked at us, eyes shining. Will you guys help me? Yes. It's top secret. Absolutely top secret. Okay. We were trembling with excitement. Breathing heavily, we sat there, hands in fists, looking at the street. Suddenly, the people on the street began to move around quickly. Rashed whispered, the military is coming. The military. We held our breaths and watched. First, a few thin people holding rifles walked by. They looked like Bengalis. Rashed whispered, Rajaka troop. Behind them, the Rajaka troop came the military, wearing shiny clothes. They were holding weapons and had bullet belts hanging from their waists. Rashed whispered, Chinese machine guns. The military walked by in one line. Their boots sounded on the paved road. Who knew where they were going? Rashed got down from the wall and I asked, where are you going? Let me see what the military does. Rashed started to follow them. I was too curious too, but I remembered father's strict orders to not go anywhere. In the evening, the eastern sky became red. It looked as if there was a fire somewhere. The military had been going in that direction. Our school had been closed for a while. I had thought that nothing could be better than not going to school. But for the past few days, I had noticed that it wasn't quite like that. Since we couldn't go to school, we couldn't do anything else either. No going to school, no playing, no nothing. For a little while, we had worked out the map of the school, but now that was finished. Rashid was adding extra things into it. I used to play a lot with Dilip, but now I didn't know where he was. I'd seen Ashraf and Fazlu a few times, but it seemed like both of them were already depressed. Rashid wandered around. His face was always tight. He believed that the freedom fighters would come any day now, and then the military collaborators and Rajakars would be finished. I wasn't allowed to go far from the house, but if I would go around a bit anyway. There weren't too many kids of my age around. Quite a few times I came face to face with the military on the streets. My heart started to thump, but they always ignored me. Slowly I became a little more courageous. There were always lots of military people standing around together. They'd go into stores, take whatever they wanted and leave without paying. Once when somebody asked for money, he got hit in the stomach with a rifle butt. His nose and mouth started to bleed. But I would never talk about this at home. Then they would stop me from going anywhere out of the house. Father just kept on telling me to stay at home and do English translations. One morning, Rashid came and asked me, "Do you have 10 paisa? What for?" He lowered his voice and said, "I need to buy an envelope. I am short of 10 paisa. Who are you going to send this letter to?" Rashid lowered his voice even more. "Ashraf Ali." "What are you going to write?" "I've already written it." He carefully took a piece of lined paper out of his pocket. On top of it was written Joy Bangla. On the other side was written Joy Bangabandhu. Below this it was a letter and it read, "Shala Ashraf Ali, you Pakistani collaborator, Mir Jafar traitor. You're not only a traitor, you speak of Islam, but you don't practice it. God will not show you mercy on Judgment Day. We will not show you any mercy in our word either. You'll be punished for your treachery by death. If you want to eat anything good before your death, you better eat it quick, because in a few days you'll go to hell, and you'll burn there for eternity. Haha, from the angel of death." I stared at Rashid in surprise. Rashid chuckled and said, "Let's give this son of a bitch a little scare. But the handwriting shows it's you. It's a little kid's handwriting." Rashid scratched his head and added another light at the bottom, and I wrote it with my left hand, so you can't tell me who it is. I nodded. Yeah, now it's okay. You'll think that you wrote it with your left hand, cause it looks so awful." Rashid said angrily, "My handwriting is not awful. Stop giving me so much and give me the 10 paisa." I stopped arguing and gave him 10 paisa. Then the two of us walked to the post office and bought an envelope. We wrote Ashraf Ali's address on top of the front and put the letter onto it and dropped it in the mailbox. 2 days later, Rashid came and told me, "I think the letter worked. How come?" "Ashraf Ali is scared out of his wits. He doesn't even come out of his house." Rashid laughed in delight. Rashid and I walked near Ashraf Ali's house and saw 2 construction workers marking the boundary wall higher. A Rajakar was standing guard in front of the door, holding a rifle. 2 days after this, Rashid did something unbelievable. I was with him that day. We were coming near the market and stopped for a while in front of the Peace Committee's office. They had burned down our League office and they had burned the NAB office, just ransacked it. The Peace Committee fixed it up for their office. The Peace Committee had a really very easy job: to loot people's houses with the Rajakar troop, to use the military to kill the relatives of the people they had enmity with, and to burn the houses of anybody who went to a freedom fighter. If the military captured anybody, their relatives would come and fall to their knees and cry in front of the Peace Committee. They never came empty-handed, they always brought money. We peeked into the office and saw Ashraf Ali sitting in a chair, looking very angry. An old man was squatting at his feet. He was sobbing. The poor man and his son and other relative must have been captured by the military. He watched them for a while, then went to the Rajakar troop office. Before it used to be Dr. Nogan's chamber. Dr. Nogan was an LMF of the olden days. He was a really good doctor. He was a good doctor, so he could keep a couple of MBBS doctors in his pocket. He could even feel a patient's pulse and be able to tell what the patient has eaten for a few days back. Everybody had told Dr. Nogan to leave for India, but he refused. He had spent his whole life here. This was his land. He would never leave it. A week after the military came, the Rajakas shot Dr. Nogan and turned his chamber into his office. Into their office. If we had the time, we would go there, hang around his office. We tried to see what they had done and did. That day, we were standing there when Chunnu Miya came out with two Rajakars. Chunnu Miya wasn't holding anything, but each Rajakar had a rifle. Before Chunnu Miya used to pull carts, but after the military came, became Rajakar's commander in one jump. It didn't look right to stand in front of the Rajakar's office. So we were walking away with Chunnu Miya and said, "You know the chairman Ashraf Ali, don't you?" "Yes." "Go him and give the news now. Don't delay, you sons of pigs." "No, we won't." "Go, you bastards, go." We quickly began to walk. Chunnu Miya and the Rajakar troop had really vulgar language. They couldn't say anything without swearing or cursing. We kept walking and the two Rajakars came behind us. Even though they had been told to go quickly, they didn't hurry. They stopped at a little tea shop and lit cigarettes. As we were near the Peace Committee's office, we saw Ashraf Ali coming. He was alone. Rashed suddenly stopped walking and said, "You go on. Let me have some fun." "What fun?" "You'll see. Go on. Make sure nobody sees you." I quickly went into the alley. Rashed opened the top button of his shirt and pulled it over his head, so that his face couldn't be seen. Then he ran up to Ashraf Ali and yelled, "Hey, you Pakistani collaborators. 2 freedom fighters are going to shoot you dead in 5 minutes. "What? What did you say? What? Rashid had vanished by then. Ashraf Ali looked a little scared. He stood there for a while and looking in the direction Rashid had run away. Then he shook his head and kept walking. It looked like he was trying to brush that matter away. Then he suddenly stopped walking when the Rajakas saw him as well and went running towards him. I suddenly realized what Rashid had done. Ashraf Ali thought that the two Rajakas were freedom fighters coming to kill him. His jaws had dropped in fear and terror. He started to scream and turned and ran as fast as he could. First Ashraf Ali ran by and behind him were two Rajakars. I came out of the alley and saw Ashraf Ali running with his fat, flabby body. He stumbled and fell. Then someone got up and kept running, screaming all the time. He tripled again, straightened and then promptly fell once again. This time he couldn't get up. He then tried to get up a few times but he couldn't. He desperately tried to crawl forward, still shrieking. He was old and fat, and not used to running. Who knew if he had broken any bones or not when he had fallen? By then the two Rajakars had caught up with him. Ashraf Ali suddenly put his hands together and started to sob. I'd never seen anybody scared in my life. Now I saw it. That must have been what they call death fear. There was so much frightening terror and fear in his eyes. That must have been how people look right before they died. Sobbing and holding his hands, Ashraf Ali sat in front of the two Rajakars with his head down. He was blubbering, "My sons, please forgive me. Forgive me. I swear on God, I didn't do it on purpose. I only did it to save my life. I am on Joy Bangla's side. I am on Bangla Bondhu's side. I seek forgiveness. I seek forgiveness. Forgiveness." A crowd had begun to gather. The two Rajakas stood there in utter astonishment. Ashraf Ali moved forward a little and wrapped his arms around the Rajakas' legs. He started to rub his face against one of their feet. His beard got all dirty from the Rajakas' shoe. His cap fell off, revealing the bald head. His eyes and his nose were steaming and looked absolutely disgusting. I just stared at him in wonder. My skin prickled, and I couldn't quite tell why. But for some reason, I was feeling ashamed. To see somebody so demeaned was so shameful. But I couldn't bring myself to leave. There was always an attraction to see forbidden things. I stood there, trapped in that attraction. The two Rajakars put Ashraf Ali up and said, "Sir, we are not freedom fighters, we are Rajakars." Suddenly, Ashraf Ali seemed to understand his mistake. He sat there and looking at the Rajakars stupidly. Then he turned to look at everybody who was watching. I saw his face slowly turn bright red in extreme rage. He turned his head around, and then there were several kids standing around him. And then he looked for Rashid among them. Suddenly, I cringed in horror. Rashid was standing right there. What if he was recognized? But Ashraf Ali didn't recognize him. He looked around, trying in vain to find Rashid. But he said in a savage voice, "Where's that son of a pig?" "Where?" Somebody asked, "Who?" "That son of a pig, that scoundrel kid." "Who? What happened? If I didn't teach his 14th generation a lesson, if I don't bury his entire family in the same grave, if I don't make vultures roam in his burnt house, then my name is not Ashraf Ali." One of the Rajakars asked, "Who are you talking about, sir?" "Who?" "The kid who came and told me." "What did he say?" "He said." Ashraf Ali suddenly stopped and looked around viciously. I was stupefied by Rashid's bravery. He was standing right under Ashraf Ali's nose and watching the fun. Around him were a lot of other kids. How would Ashraf Ali ever find Rashid out of them all? Besides, Rashid's head had been covered with shirt, so Ashraf Ali didn't even see his face. One of the Rajakars growled at everyone. Everybody were watching the fun. "Go on, get out of here." The people had shown no signs of leaving. In fact, more people, sensing that something interesting was going on, were crowding around. Ashraf Ali must have hurt himself badly by falling so awkwardly. He was sweating heavily. He was gasping. Probably he wasn't used to running around. Not being able to stay standing, he fell down again and groaned. The Rajakars tried again to disperse the crowd, but it didn't work. Instead, the crowd was getting bigger. Finally, having no option, they stopped the rickshaw and got Ashraf Ali into it. He was still groaning in pain as they took him away. When the people had gone away, I whispered to Rashid, "You're awesome." "Dangerous." Rashid laughed and looked with showing all of his teeth. "That was just for fun. When I really get him, then you'll see." At night, I heard father say to mother, "Did you hear what happened to Ashraf Ali today?" "Who's Ashraf Ali?" "Chairman of the Peace Committee. What happened to him?" "A freedom fighter caught him on the street. He said, 'Your days are finished,' said the Kalmas." "He said that? A freedom fighter?" "Yes, the freedom fighter had a stun gun. The moment he took it out, two Rajakars appeared." "Oh no, then what happened?" "Some people are saying that there was a fight. Others are saying there wasn't any fight. The freedom fighter just vanished." "Really?" "Yes." Father was laughing as he continued. Ashraf Ali thought the Rajakars were freedom fighters. Then he was holding their feet and sobbing. "Really? Then have the freedom fighters begun to come?" "That's what it looks like." I struggled to hide my laughter. I didn't tell them what really happened. The next day, Rashid and I wrote a second letter to Ashraf Ali. It started out like this. "This time you rubbed your face on the Rajakar's feet. You begged forgiveness and they forgave you. But in a few days, when I will be standing in front of you, there will be no use of rubbing your face on my feet. No use. I will never forgive you." A week later, Rashid came very early in the morning. With no school and nothing to do, there wasn't any hurry to get up. And sometimes it would be almost 10 before I got up. Rashid came and woke me up, rubbing my eyes, and I got up and mumbled, "You? So early? It's not even, it's 10. "It's already 10. "Yeah." Rashid said worriedly, "I think Auntie's mad at you." "Why?" I said, "Is Ibu home?" Auntie said, "That lazy bum is still asleep. See if you can wake him up. She told me to drag you out of the bed, to get you up." Trying to get the sleepiness out of my eyes, I said, "That's just how mother talks." "Why are you here so early?" "There's news. My sleep vanished." "What news?" "Can't say it now, let's go out." I haven't washed up or eaten anything. Then you eat and stuff. Why are you lying in there like a lazy bum? I got up and washed my face. Mother said to Rashid, do eat with Ibu. Do you want to eat with Ibu? No thanks, auntie. I've eaten already. Eat a little more? No, auntie. I could have a cup of tea. Tea? Yes, please. Hard liquor without milk. Fresh leaves. Mother looked at Rashid, slightly surprised. It took her a while to figure out what hard liquor without milk, fresh tea leaves meant. Rashid always said that when he went to Aziz Mia's house, he went to Aziz Mia's restaurant to drink tea. At home, I never drink tea, but mother made Rashid tea without milk, with new leaves and hard liquor. When I ate breakfast, Rashid enthusiastically sipped his tea. He said, "First class tea." After breakfast, Rashid and I went out. We sat on the wall, legs swinging. Rashid lowered his voice and said, "The freedom fighters are here." "They're here?" "Yes." "Where?" "On the other side of the river." "Really?" "Yes. A small team is here on a special mission." "What mission?" "A special mission." "What's that?" Rashid shook his head. "I don't know. They want to meet us." I jumped up. "They want to meet who?" "Us." "Why?" "Remember we made that map with everything about the military camp on it?" "Yeah." "The freedom fighters really like that." "Yeah." "Really?" "How did they get the map?" "I gave it to them." "You did? How?" Rashid laughed mysteriously. "I have connections everywhere." "Now they want to meet us." "Yes." "But we are so little." "Who cares about being big or small? The matter is responsibility. Just because we are kids doesn't mean we can't take on big responsibilities." I nodded. "That's true." This was so exciting. I started to breathe heavily. I gulped and asked, "How will we meet them? When will we meet them?" "Tonight." "Tonight?" I flabbergasted. "How would we meet them tonight?" Rashid shook his head. "That's what they said. There's no time. I'm going to go. Are you coming with me?" "Me? Tonight?" "Yes." "How? What will I say at home?" "I don't know. Make something up." "What should I say?" I thought about it and realized I couldn't let the chance of us seeing a real team of freedom fighters pass me by. Rashid suggested, "Tell your mother that tonight you'll be spending the night with me. If you want, I can tell her." I shook my head. "Your telling won't help. If your mother or father told her, it might work. Besides, now there's a military everywhere. There's a curfew every night after 10, so mother won't let me go anywhere at night." As I was talking, I suddenly remembered Oruapa. I looked at Rashid. But what? "We may be able to use Oruapa." "Oruapa?" "Yes." I furrowed my brow and thought about it. "We could make a plan. If we got caught, it would be a disaster. Father would absolutely kill me, but if we couldn't even do this for the country, then how would it be?" I asked Rashid, "You want to come and check with me in the afternoon? Let me see what I can do." Rashid left. I went to Oruapa's house to put my plan into action. Oruapa was listening to the news on the radio. Her eyes were dancing as she said to me, "Have you heard?" "What?" "The freedom fighters have really started to fight. Just what you would call amazing. They're not fighting, however, they want. Everything is carefully planned. I think I'll just cut off my hair and dress like a boy and become a freedom fighter." I looked at Oruapa and said, "Then you won't be able to talk. Your voice will give you away." Oruapa made her voice deep and said, "I'll talk like this, then won't it do?" I laughed at Oruapa's antics. Oruapa turned off the radio and asked, "How come you don't come over these days?" "I'm here now." "I bet you will need something. What is it?" "You won't tell anyone, will you?" "You have left me and married somebody else." "Oof, you and your teasing." "Fine, I won't tease you anymore. What do you need?" I put on the innocent face and told a big lie. Father gave me 6 pages of translation to do. 6 pages? Oruapa pretended to be dumbfounded. "Such torture? Has your father joined the Pakistani military or something?" I thought I would finish it, but You didn't. No. And you want me to do it for you. I nodded. Never. Uruapa slapped the table. Uruapa, I will never ask you to do anything again. This is the last time. You don't have to do it for me. I'll do it myself. You have to just help me when I get stuck. Will you? Please. Okay, fine. But on one condition. What condition? After we get married, give me a nose ring. Stop teasing. I'm talking about something important. Okay, talk. You can't tell mother or father you're helping me with this translation. Alright, I won't. I'll come over tonight to do it. What? Uruapa pretended to be surprised. How can you come to the in-laws hours before we are even married? Oof. Uruapa pressed the end of her sari to her face and giggled. Alright, go over then. If it gets too late, then I'll stay over. Then you can read The Prince and the Pauper book to me. Remember, that's just a little bit left. Uruapa said, okay. I looked at Uruapa carefully. She didn't suspect a thing. I held my breath and said, then will you tell mother, don't mention the translations? Yes, I'll tell her. I carefully let out my breath. The hardest part of the plan worked, and was finished. At night, I would tell mother that I was going to Uruapa's and nobody would suspect a thing. Then I would go to Uruapa's house and tell her that I wouldn't be able to make it that night. We have to do it another day. Uruapa didn't suspect anything, and father and mother wouldn't even know that anything was wrong. It was a foolproof plan. But I was still nervous, and I tried for a long time to calm myself down. I felt bad telling such a big lie to Uruapa, but I wasn't really doing it to be naughty. I was doing it for the country, for the freedom fighters. Uruapa looked at me and said, what is it? Why do you look so serious all of a sudden? I forced a little laugh. Who said I look serious? Yeah, you should stay cheerful like a kid. If kids look serious, then it doesn't look nice. Hey Uruapa, can I ask you something? Go ahead. I'm a kid, but suppose I have a responsibility which is an adult's responsibility, but only I can do it. I mean, me and some people like me. Then, well, Uruapa looked at me sharply and suddenly I began to stutter. I kept stammering and Uruapa looked at me with surprise before asking, what are you saying? Responsibility? What responsibility? No, I mean, tell me what you're talking about. Open up. No, it's nothing. I stopped talking. Uruapa knitted her eyebrows and looked at me. I started to get a nagging feeling of worry. I had a nice plan, and now it looked like it wasn't going to work. I'd open my big mouth and get myself into trouble. Uruapa kept gazing at me as he said, listen, if you're thinking about joining the freedom fighters, then forget it. If you try that, then you're going to get into trouble and you'll get the other freedom fighters into trouble with you. You're still a kid. Totally a kid. I frantically shook my head. No, I wasn't talking about that. Yes, don't talk about that. You have plenty of opportunities to help the country once it's liberated. Yes, I will. I nodded. Study hard. Do translations and it will help the country. Don't do anything crazy. Don't worry, I won't. When I left Uruapa's house, I carefully let out a long breath. It wasn't too late. Only 8, but it was so dark. Rashed and I walked cautiously into the darkness. There weren't too many people on the streets. These days, nobody left the house at night. When we reached the market, we had to hide behind the store. A few Rajakas were already standing by and talking. At the river, we had to go down to a field. Now there were always military on guard, both sides of the bridge. In the daytime, the military would stop and ask them a few thousand questions. And if they suspected anything at all, they'd shoot them by the riverbank. Nobody used the bridge anymore. They'd usually cross the river by boat. It seemed that Rashed knew the area pretty well. After walking for a mile or so, we came to the place where lots of boats were standing together by the riverbank. Rashed looked around and called in a hushed voice. Hanif bhai. Who is it? Me, Rashed. Over here. We somehow got into the boat. The boatman asked, anybody else coming? No. The boatman pushed the boat away from the bank and the person called Hanif asked, who's with you? My friend Ibu. I told him about you, remember? Oh, it didn't look like Hanif person liked to talk. He sang to himself, sitting there on the boat. Oh my dear, why have you left me? He was completely tuneless, and the words had no meaning. But he kept on singing to himself. It was dark, and there was a cool wind from the river, and after a while of sitting there with the swaying boat, I actually began to enjoy the song. I lowered my voice and asked, "Is he a freedom fighter?" "No. He just works for them." "Oh." We got down on the other side of the river and started to walk. After walking for a long time, we came to a small house hidden by the trees. A dog was barking on the street. Someone asked roughly, "Who is it?" "Hanif." "Who is it? Which Hanif?" "From Chandni Bazaar," Rashid whispered in my ear. Secret password. Someone came out from the darkness. There was a rifle hanging from his shoulder. He said, "Come inside." "Who are these kids?" "The ones that I told you about." "But they're just babies." Inside, a lantern was lit, and there were quite a few people sitting around. A couple of them were playing cards on the bed. A few stun guns were shining in the lantern's dim light. A guy wearing glasses asked, "How are you doing, Hanif?" "Good. I brought the people who have made the map of the military camp." "Well, they're just babies." The guy with the glasses looked at us and exclaimed, "Come closer." We went closer. He roughed out our hair and said, "Looking at this map, I thought you would be older. It was a first-class map." "Why did you learn to draw such maps?" Rashid replied, "We didn't learn. We just kind of guessed." I added, "We made the map when we used to play treasure hunting. There was a kid called Ashraf with us who drew all the buildings and classrooms, the ponds, the trees, everything. And Rashid did the other stuff, everything in the military camp." The glasses guy shook his head in disbelief and said slowly, "You have done an amazing thing. But I had thought you would be older, like those big kids in class 9 or 10. If I had known you were so little, I would have never told you to come. Not for anything." "Won't they worry about you at home?" We hesitated and then said, "No." "Why not?" "They don't know at home." "They don't know at home?" "They don't know." He sat there with his head in his hands for a few moments. Then he looked at us and said, "What happened has happened. You can call me Kajal Bhai." "Kajal Bhai?" "Yes. My real name isn't Kajal though. We're here on a special mission, so I'm going to not allow to tell anybody my real name. I really like that name, Kajal. So, from now on, my name is Kajal Bhai." A bearded man pulled out his beard and joked, "Sometimes I forget and call you Shurma instead of Kajal." Kajal gave a full-throated laugh and said, "Oof, Shurma is a girl's name." Another one suddenly sang out, "If your eyes are bad, then why do you put Kajal on them?" Everybody laughed out loudly. Kajal Bhai looked at his watch and said, "The second team still hasn't come. Should we wait for them or begin?" A kind of dark man tugged at his beard and commented, "The gunboat on the river is a real menace. It takes a long time to cross it. Since there's military on the guard on the other side, they can't come straight. They have to really get far out of their way and come through the paddy fields." A fair guy said, "With those boxes of ammo on their heads, but the villagers do help. That they really do. If they didn't, then what would we do?" Kajal Bhai said, "Then let's start without them." "Yeah, start." Kajal Bhai took out a few papers out of his pockets and put them down. He held the lantern up to them, and we put our heads up and saw our school's map. Rashid said wide-eyed, "Our map." "Yes." Kajal Bhai laughed a little and said, "Now you're going to call it a gold mine." Kajal Bhai looked at the map for a while and before asking, "Is it drawn to scale? 1 inch corresponding to 10 yards. "Yes," we nodded. Ashraf drew the whole thing out on a graph paper. He walked around and measured it all. "Very good." Kajal Bhai studied the map again. "The library is a little distance away from the school. And you wrote here arms depot, right? Rashed nodded his head. Yes. How do you know? I saw. What did you saw? I saw the military come back after an operation and stole all the weapons there. The boxes of bullets go there, and there's always a few people on guard there. The people who carried boxes of bullets on their heads said that it's full of machine guns and machine guns. Kajal Bhai marked the library on the map with a red pencil. Then he asked, "Where's the door of this?" We showed him. "There's one door over here and one door over there." The fair guy with his tongue and remarked, "It would have been better if it was on that side." Kajal Bhai replied, "Yes, but that's not the big problem." Everybody discussed the pond for a while. At one point, Kajal Bhai asked, "If somebody lies on the pond's incline, can we be seen from the school's second floor?" "No." Rashed and I shook our heads together. "How do you know?" "We used to play hide and seek. We hide there sometimes." "So, that means if somebody's on the pond's incline, then then he won't be seen from the bunker on the roof." "No." "Good." Kajal Bhai happily made some of the couple of crosses on the map around the pond. "If we cover from here, then the whole thing is safe. The whole thing can be covered with 2 SMGs. Everybody nodded. The bearded guy said, "The problem with the thing is the bunker. Can we try it with mortars?" "No." Kajal Bhai shook his head. "There's houses and stores nearby. We might end up killing the public." Rashed volunteered. "There's never any military on that bunker on the roof. The only way to go up is if they have to." "How do you know?" "I've seen. Sometimes they've run up to the roof while they're practicing. Besides, now it's rainy season. The roof of the bunker isn't too great, so nobody really stays up there." "Really?" "Yes, and the military is really scared of the leeches. In the rainy season, there are a lot of leeches there. And what else? The second floor of our school isn't finished yet. The stairs are open. They go up this way." Rashed showed Kajal Bhai on the map. "You have to go and use these stairs to go to the bunker." Kajal Bhai furrowed his brow and studied Rashed. Rashed went on, "If anybody stays on this side of the road with a stun gun or a machine gun and shoots towards the stairs, then nobody will be able to get to the roof." Kajal Bhai gazed at Rashed with surprise, then asked, "What's on this side of the road?" "Nur Muhammad Bakery. It makes bread. On this side is the Uttam Laundry. Over here is the tea shop." "Is it a brick building?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "We could cover the stairs from there." "Yes." Kajal Bhai and the others started to talk about all kinds of things with the map. 2 of them even got in the argument about something. Kajal Bhai stopped everybody and said, "I think that this location is very good for an attack. We could take a nice positions, and I would like to take a couple of rocket launchers from the arms depot. We are really short of rocket launchers. If we can't do that, then it wouldn't be a bad idea to blow up the whole thing." The fair guy objected. "But we can't change the global plan. The primary mission is 0 plus 24 hours. So I'm not changing the primary mission. The operation is for the second team, all the local kids." I wanted to know what's the primary mission. Kajal Bhai laughed and said, "That's a top secret operation and I'm not supposed to tell anybody. Nobody knows when or where it will be. I'm the only person who knows the details." The dark guy said, "Who knows what the orders are?" "What? If for any reason we ever get caught by the military, then the first thing we have to do is shoot Kajal Bhai dead ourselves, so that they can't get anything out of him by torture." Rashed raised his eyebrows and said, "You'll shoot him to death, Kajal Bhai." Kajal Bhai made his eyes all big and exclaimed, If we are caught, not before that." Everybody laughed. The fair guy explained, "At the beginning of the battle, they were totally without planning, but now everything is carefully planned out. The whole country has been divided into 11 sectors. Each sector has a job." Suddenly a whistling sound came from outside. Immediately everybody stopped talking. Kajal Bhai carefully turned down the lantern. He got up from the bed and picked up a stun gun and stood by the door. The fair guy whispered to Rashid and me, "Lie down on the ground." We lay down. My heart was thumping with excitement. I lay there and listened, hardly able to breathe. I heard the sound of footsteps talking from outside. Then quiet. All was quiet. Again the sound of whistling could be heard, this time twice. Then everyone slowly began to talk again. Kajal Bhai left the room. The fair guy said, "Looks like the Rajagars were really acting up. We should do bushfire and let them know we are here. Then they won't dare to come close." Everyone roared with laughter again. That night, we ate dinner with the freedom fighters. There wasn't much to eat, coarse red rice and egg. Everybody ate this, and with such appetite that you would think they were eating korma pulao. There was tea after dinner. Since there was no sugar in it, it was made with molasses. Tasted kind of like custard. Once we were done eating, Kajal Bhai set out a mat and two worn-out thin pillows on the floor and told us, "You sleep now. In the morning we'll take you back to the town." Rashid protested, "I'm not sleepy yet." "But you still have to sleep. Pretend it's an order from the high command." We lay down there, and Rashid and I whispered as we lay there. Our first encounter with real freedom fighters. Amazing. We lay there quietly. We just couldn't sleep. We were so excited. A dog was barking outside, and a fox howled somewhere in the distance. The sound of a fox howling at night gave me an empty feeling in my chest. I wondered what the reason was. From even further away came the second sound of the shooting. Maybe the military had shot someone on the bridge. I thought I would never fall asleep, but as I lay there, I really did doze off at some point. As I slept, I dreamt that I was a freedom fighter. I was strutting through the mud with a huge machine gun, just like a freedom fighter. Somebody woke me up in the middle of the night. "Ibu! Hey, Ibu! Get up! Look who's here!" I jumped up. It took me a while to figure out where I was. Rashid shook me again and said, "Look, Ibu, look." There was someone standing in front of me in the lantern's dim light. He had long hair and a stubble. There was a gamcha tied to his head. He was wearing a short lungi and green boots. I looked at him carefully and suddenly I knew who he was. Shafiq Bhai. Shafiq Bhai hugged us hard and not wanting to let us go. After a little while, he said, "Now see if you know this guy. Don't look yet. Close your eyes." Rashid and I stood there with our eyes closed. We could tell everybody was making someone stand in front of us. Then Shafiq Bhai said mysteriously, "Okay now, open your eyes." We opened our eyes and saw Kader standing there. He was wearing a short lungi and there was a gamcha around his waist. And he was holding a rifle. "Kader, it's you." Rashid and I ran forward and leaped on top of him so hard that he fell down, us with him. Kader cried, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Let go, or it won't be good." We didn't let him go. Kader was in our class, but he had never been our friend. But suddenly, holding him late at the night in the lantern's dim light, we felt a deep compassion for him. Kader yelled, "Let go, let me go, it won't be good. I will brush fire." We still didn't let him go, and we couldn't say anything. But, "It's you, Kader. You!" Everyone else stood around us laughing. Finally, we let go of Kader. Kader stood up and brushed himself off. Then looked at us and laughed. He was looking grown up somehow. Rashid and I started to question him. "Are you really a freedom fighter? How did you become one? They took you? We want to be freedom fighters too then. Will they take us? Did you fight in a real battle?" Kader didn't say anything. He just laughed like an adult. When we said that we wanted to be freedom fighters as well, he said, "No, they won't take you. You're too small." "Then how did they take you?" "I'm the only one in your class cause I failed so much. Otherwise, I would be in college." "Oof, liar. You guys are freedom fighters. Kajal Bhai made you an awesome map. A map of the military camp. There's going to be an operation with your map, right? We nodded. So then? Kader said softly. It's very hard. Hard eating, hard sleeping, hard living. There are sores on my feet from walking through the muds in these shoes. There's lice in my head so big that you wouldn't believe. I go 2 or 3 days without no food except for dry cheetah. And boxes of ammos are very heavy, so you wouldn't believe. Kader laughed so little and said, but you won't believe how much all the villagers care for us. That day an old lady helped me and sobbed. She was saying, you're so little. Why do you have to go to fight? Stay with me. I don't have any children. You'll be my son, my treasure. She said that? Yes. If we stay in any of the villages, then they butcher a cow just for us. But we are not allowed to do that. You're not? No. If we eat at anybody's house, then people will find out. Later the military will go and burn the house. Suddenly Kader remembered something. He said wide-eyed. We caught a Rajakar. You caught a Rajakar? Yes. The Shala fell asleep while guarding at the Kodamtola bridge. Then we crept up behind him and caught him. We tied his hands behind his back and blindfolded him and brought him back with us. Blindfolded? Yes. I asked what will you do with him now? Father said vaguely. They'll kill him, I suppose. Kill him? I started up in horror. I guess. Have you seen them kill anybody? Yes. I was there when they killed the Ullapur's Peace Committee chairman. Kader made a sound and spit on the ground. Number 1 collaborator. Have you killed anybody? Kader didn't reply. He dug at the ground with his foot and then said softly, I don't know. It depends on the fight. Nobody knows who gets killed. When, on whose bullet, you can't tell anything. We have ambushed a couple of times near the sandy river bank. Kader suddenly changed the topic and said, let's go check out what the Rajakar Shala is doing. We went out with Kader. In the yard, a man was tied to a tree. He was crossed over with his 2 hands firmly behind his back. His eyes were also tied with a piece of cloth. A lamp was glowing next to him. In the dim light of the lamp, the crouched man looked absolutely eerie. Kader went close up to him and called, Hey Shala. The Rajakar didn't say anything. Hey Shala, Pakistani collaborator. The Rajakar still didn't say anything. Kader went up a little closer and pushed the man's head with his foot. Son of a pig. Bastard. Why don't you say anything? Should I get you with my rifle's butt? I don't know whether Kader would really hit the man in the head or not with the rifle's butt. But right then, Kajal Bhai and a few others joined us. Kajal Bhai came close, then stood quietly for us a little while saying, let him go. He's been tied up in a way his blood circulation will stop. Somebody said in surprise, I'll untie him? Yes, let me talk to him a little, and then we will shoot him. Kajal Bhai didn't reply. After the Rajakar's blindfold had been removed and his hands untied, he rubbed his wrists and watched us fearfully. He was just a villager. He didn't look any different from a young freedom fighter. Kajal Bhai went forward a little and asked, What's your name? The man muttered, Afzal. Afzal? Yes. Afzal, do you know what the Pakistani military have done in this country? The Rajakar didn't reply. Kajal Bhai raised his voice, asked, Do you? Yes. What have they done? Burnt houses. What else? Killed people. How many people have they killed? The Rajakar didn't reply. He just sat there with his head down. Kajal Bhai shouted, How many people have they killed? A lot. Then why did you join them? The Rajakar lifted his head and started to say something, then stopped. Kajal Bhai said, Go on, say it. Haji Sahib said to join the Rajakars. Good pay. I'm an ignorant person. I don't understand anything. So you join the Rajakars. Won't you open your eyes and see which team are you joining? The Rajakar just stood there with his head down. You don't understand anything. You're ignorant, but you do understand the country. The Rajakar nodded yes. You have betrayed your country and its people. Do you know what the punishment is for betraying your country? The Rajakar didn't say anything. Kajalbhai suddenly thundered, "Do you know what the punishment is?" Then the Rajakar burst into tears. It felt very bad to see an old person cry. That person, I had seen Ashraf Ali. Today I was seeing this man. I shuddered. Kajalbhai shouted out again, "Why don't you reply? Tell me." The Rajakar still didn't reply. He covered his face with his eyes and kept crying. Kajalbhai looked at him for a while and then suddenly said kindly, "Afzal." The man slowly lifted his head and looked at Kajalbhai. "Yes, get up." The man didn't quite understand what Kajalbhai was saying. He sat there and looked up at Kajalbhai in surprise. Kajalbhai moved forward and took the man's hand and pulled him up. He said, "You have nothing to fear. We won't harm you." The man stared at Kajalbhai in surprise. He looked like he couldn't believe his ears. "You joined the Rajakars. You betrayed your country and its people. But I believe you. You didn't understand what you were doing. You made a mistake, and a very, very, very big mistake. If someone makes a mistake, he must be given a second chance. We will give you another chance. He will let you go." The Rajakar suddenly dropped down and held Kajalbhai's feet. "I won't go. I'll stay with you. Take me as a freedom fighter." Kajalbhai pulled the man up. "No, never touch anybody's feet. I'll rip Haji Sahib's throat out." No, you don't need to rip out anybody's throat. Afzal, we are not here to kill our own people. The Pakistanis are doing that. We are here to save this country." Sobbing, the man said, No, you don't need to rip anybody's throat. Afzal, we are not here to kill our own people. The Pakistanis are doing that. We are here to save this country." Sobbing, the man said, "I'll give my life for you, sir. My life, I swear. I swear on God." "Very good," Kajalbhai said, patting the man on the back. "If you must, then give your life for the country. God will be happy. Loving your country is a part of your faith. Those who don't believe in their countries and they don't love their countries are traitors. No matter how much he prays and fasts, he's still a traitor, and the place for traitors is hell." Kajalbhai said to somebody, "Give Afzal something to eat. Let him stay with us for today and see what we do a little. Then let him go." "I won't go, sir. I won't. I want to stay with you." "If you want to stay, then stay. But first you have to go back to your village. You have to tell everybody who joined the Rajakars with you to join the freedom fighters instead. Alright?" The man nodded obediently. "Now go and eat something." After Afzal had gone inside with a few others, Kajalbhai lowered his voice and said, "Keep an eye on him. Be careful about what you say. Make sure he doesn't hear anything, and he shouldn't. Tell everybody to be very good around him. Still, for all he's a Rajakar. If we can get a Rajakar on our side, then it would be twice as good." "True. We got a report that if you can explain things to Rajakar, then they can be brought on to the freedom fighters' side. Let's see if it's true or not. But be very careful. When you let him go, blindfold him again." "Blindfold him?" "Yes. So that he won't be able to do anything if he wants to betray us." "What do you think? Is he going to betray us?" "I doubt it. How many people are there who can betray their own country?" Kajalbhai looked at us and said, "Well, my little freedom fighters, want a cup of tea?" We nodded our heads. "Then let's go. See if you can go to sleep again after that tea. We'll take you to town in the morning." Kader said softly, "It's almost morning." I looked at the sky. The darkness was slowly giving away to the light of the morning. Looking at the sky and feeling the early morning breeze suddenly made me unspeakably happy. Oh, when the country would be liberated, it would be so wonderful. I didn't know why, but tears came to my eyes. I was tiptoeing home early in the morning. Hanif had dropped us off near home a little while ago. As I neared Oruapa's house, she called me sharply, "Ibu." I froze in horror. Oruapa was standing as still as a statue near the window. I suddenly got scared looking at her. Oruapa said coldly, "Come here." I stammered. Oruapa, there's this thing, I mean right now at home. Oruapa looked at me terribly and said icily, "Come here." I went to her. Oruapa opened the door. The moment I went inside, she grabbed my hand and she grabbed it so hard that it started to hurt. She stared at me and her eyes savage, gritted her teeth and said, "Where were you last night?" Startled, I stood there, head down. It was a disaster. I had been caught. "Where were you?" I stood there quietly. Oruapa shouted, "Where were you?" "Oruapa, I can't tell you." "You have to," Oruapa said fiercely, "or I will kill you. I will absolutely kill you." Oruapa looked as if she really would kill me. I said somehow, "Oruapa, do you know I've been standing here all night?" "All night? Do you know that, do you?" "Oruapa, everyone at your house knows you're here. I know that you have run away from home. Where were you? Where were you last night?" "Oruapa, I can't tell you." "You have to." Oruapa squeezed my hand so hard that the pain brought tears to my eyes. Her face horrible. She said, "You have to tell me. You have to. You used me in your plan. Now you have to tell me." "Oruapa, you have to. You have to tell me where were you last night." "Oruapa, I can't tell you." "Oruapa, let me go." She pushed me in the chest and said, "Go. Never come to me again. Never. Go, get away from here." Oruapa had never spoken to me so harshly. All of a sudden, tears came to my eyes. But I could never tell Oruapa the truth. Rashid and I had touched Kajal Bhai and sworn upon the country that we will never tell a soul. I kept my head down to hide my tears. Oruapa opened the door and said, "Go on, get away from here. Get away from here right now, and never come back." I took a paper from my pocket and handed it to Oruapa. She asked, "What is this?" "Your letter from Shofiq Bhai." "Shofiq?" She jumped up. "Shofiq's back. Did you meet him?" "I can't tell you, Oruapa. I swore on the country." "Did you meet the freedom fighters?" I stood there with my head down. Oruapa bent down and pulled me to her, holding against her chest, and she said in a broken voice, "You're such a small boy. You should be flying kites. You should be playing ball. But you're working with the freedom fighters, with your own life in your hands. You, a little boy like you. A little boy like you." Holding me tightly in her arms, Oruapa began to cry. Although Oruapa knew I had been out somewhere the whole night, she didn't tell anybody, so father and mother had no idea about anything. But I was very careful the whole day. If by mistake I said something like "last night mosquito bites," then I was finished. Since I hadn't slept well at night, in the afternoon my eyes were falling shut. But I somehow managed to stay awake the whole day. The next morning I sat legs swinging on the wall like usual. Father had gone to college a little while back, and the military had announced to keep the college open. There weren't any students in the college, but father still had to go and sit there. Father went to college very sadly every day. Father would probably leave everything and just go off somewhere soon. Who knew where he would go? Maybe to his village home. The roads still weren't safe though, that was the problem. I figured out it was Wednesday, sitting there on the wall. Every Wednesday there used to be a big market here. People would come with all kinds of stuff to sell from the nearby areas. There wasn't a thing you couldn't get from the Wednesday market. That stopped after the military came. In the past few weeks, it was slowly starting up again. Not as big as before. There was a small market. I saw people buying ducks, chicken and vegetables, pots and baskets. People bringing baskets of fruit on their heads. It was June and an extremely hot even in the morning. I saw someone go by with a basket of bananas on his head. He was sweating like crazy. The moment his eyes met mine, he looked away and then I suddenly recognized him. He was Kajal Bhai's team. Last night we had tea together. There weren't only fruits in that basket. There must have been weapons. My heart was thumping in excitement. When would they attack? Tonight? I thought about following the man and seeing where he went and what he did, but then I decided not to. If he was pretending he didn't know me, I had to pretend I didn't know him. I fidgeted restlessly. If Rashid came, I would talk to him. I was sure that they would attack tonight. As Shafiq Bhai arrived, Kader, where was everyone? At the Noor Mohammed bakery, I jumped off the wall and right then Rashid walked up. His face was serious. I ran to him and said, Rashid, do you know tonight? Rashid held a finger to my lips. Shh. Quietly. I lowered my voice. Tonight's the operation in the camp. Rashid gazed at me in surprise. How do you know? I saw one of the freedom fighters go with a basket of bananas. There must have been weapons under those bananas. Yes, Rashid nodded. There's a problem. What problem? Shafiq Bhai has gone to Noor Mohammed bakery. He has a light machine gun with him. But what? Is Noor Mohammed Pakistani? No. Noor Mohammed's alright. He's a genuine Joy Bangla. Then what is it? Shafiq Bhai couldn't take too much ammo with him. He needs at least 1 hour worth of bullets. He only has around 10 minutes worth. Why don't they take some more to him? They can't. There's a strict patrolling near the school. There are 2 Rajakars at the checkpost, and a few of the Pakistani military sit around at one of them. They open everything and see. Then, everything else is ready. But if Shafiq Bhai doesn't get any more ammo, then they will probably have to cancel the program. The success of the operation depends on controlling the bunker on the roof. Then, they're still trying. But it's a dangerous situation. Rashid was quiet for a moment. I have an idea. What? How would it be if we took the ammo to Shafiq Bhai? Us? Yes, you and me. Fazlu and Ashraf if they want to. How? We'll tie the belts of bullets to our bodies and wear our clothes on top. They won't suspect anything since we're kids. What do you think? Will Fazlu and Ashraf agree? Why not? What if they tell? Rashid narrowed his eyes at me. Did you tell anybody where we went last night? No. But Oru Abba found out from Shafiq Bhai's letter. But did you tell anybody? No. Then shoot the others. Do you think you're the only one with a sense of responsibility? You're the only one who's good and everybody else is bad? You're the only one who's smart and everybody else is dumb? Did I say that? Then what are you trying to say? I'm saying that for all we are still kids. So what? Grown-ups think that we don't understand anything just because we are kids. But both of us know that that's not true. We understand everything. Sometimes we pretend we don't, but actually we understand everything. That's true. Now is a time that has never come before. Rashid started to talk like a grown-up. Now the grown-ups themselves don't know what to do. How are they going to tell us? Now we have to decide ourselves. Do you understand? Yes. Then let's go. Where? To call Fazlu and Ashraf. First we went to Fazlu's house and got him. When he saw us, he happily came out of the house and said, It's good that you have come. How come? I'm totally bored of sitting here and playing snakes and ladders. And that Shriuli is such a cheat. If she comes close to the ladder, she cheats and goes up it. And when she lands on a snake, Rashid said sternly, You play snakes and ladders? Taken aback, Fazlu asked, Why? What's wrong with that? Don't you know what's going on in the country? We have so much to do. Like what? Suppose the freedom fighters are fighting with the military and they need help. Will you help? In an instant, Fazlu's eyes became huge. He stammered. Really? Really? Swear on God? Yes. Will you? Fazlu started breathing heavily. He said, Of course I will. What are you talking about? What do I have to do? What? Easy. I'll tell you everything. But the thing is, you can't tell anybody. Not even a soul. not even if you die. When I say not even if you die, I mean it. You might get caught by the Rajakars, you might get caught by the military, they might stab you to death with bayonets, they might kill you on the riverbank, but you can't tell anyone. I swear on God I won't tell. I swear on God. Rashed looked at me and said, "Didn't I tell you that everyone will help?" Fazlu said, "Now tell me what to do." "I will. First let's see if we get caught, Ashraf." Fazlu also agreed the moment we told him. I thought he wouldn't agree. He was the class's first boy. He never did anything absurd. Before, when Rashed used to go on processions, Ashraf used to shake his head and say, "It's not right for such young boys to go on processions." But this wasn't processions or politics. This was the country and its liberation, military and freedom fighters, staying alive and dying. The four of us started to walk towards Rashid's house as Rashed explained his plan to Fazlu and Ashraf. Ashraf started to breathe heavily. He asked, "Have you tried it? Can you walk with the belts tied to your bodies?" Ashraf was our class's first boy. He never talked to anybody informally. "I haven't tried it, but why wouldn't we be able to walk? What if the bullets can be seen? What if they come out? We'll have to try it out first." "Yes," Ashraf said worriedly. "We have to use the thin rope or thread and tie them really well to our body." "Yes." "Do you have a thread?" Rashed scratched his head. "If you look around, we'll find some." Ashraf shook his head and said, "What if you don't find any?" We'll buy some on the way. I have money." Ashraf was the first boy in our class. He never talked to anybody informally and he always had money. Fazlu suggested, "How about if we carry a ball while we are going, so that if it looks like we are just going to play?" Ashraf's eyes began to shine. He said, "Good idea. Do you have a ball at home?" "No." "I do. You guys wait. I'll run and get it." Rashid's house was very far away. It took us a long time to get there. There was a lock on the door. Rashed opened the door with a key tied to his waist and went inside. I asked, "Isn't anybody home?" "Who's going to be home?" What kind of question was that? His father, his mother, his brothers and sister would be home. Before I could ask him anything, Rashed pulled out a box covered in a jute mat from under his bed. There was coiled belts of bullets inside the box. I had never seen bullets before. I carefully touched them. Smooth, shining bullets. They felt somehow cold. Touching them made me shudder. Who knew maybe these very bullets would go inside a Pakistani military's brain? Fazlu asked, "Where did you get these?" "If you want, I could tell you, but it's better if you don't. Then if you ever get caught, you won't be able to say anything no matter how much they torture you." Fazlu paled a little at the mention of torture, but he nodded seriously and said, "That's true." Rashed took a belt of bullets and we tried on Fazlu first. His shirt and undershirt were taken off and the bullets tied securely to his body and with a thread. Fazlu put his undershirt and shirt back on and asked, "Well, can you tell?" "No." Ashraf shook his head. "You can't tell?" I said, "You look a little fat. But you are so thin. A little fat looks good on you." Rashed said, "Try walking." Fazlu hesitantly walked forward a few steps. "Well, any problems?" "No, it's a little heavy. But I can't walk." "Try moving your arms and legs around." Fazlu moved his arms and legs, a little awkwardly, but pretty well. Rashed looked at us and asked, "What do you think? Will it work?" Ashraf replied enthusiastically, 1,000 times. We began to twist the belts around our bodies one by one, with quite a little bit of enthusiasm. With our clothes on top, the bullets couldn't be seen, and the belts were pretty heavy, so we didn't delay and headed straight off. Rashid murmured. Be very careful. Make sure no one suspects anything if they look at us. Yeah, we have to talk and everything has to be really normal as we go, I said. When we walk by the Rajakars, don't go too quickly and don't go too far away from them. Yes, Ashraf nodded. We could even talk with the Rajakars if we want to. What the time is or something like that. If they stop to check him, we could stop and watch too. Yes. That's what we would do normally anyway. Ashraf bought 4 lollipops from a store. Apparently you could walk very normally if you were eating something. Licking the lollipops as we walked, we discovered that this was true. At the cross section of our school, 2 Rajakars were standing there and watching everybody go by. If anybody had a bag of snack or a bag, then they would stop him or her and open them up. Talking away, we went by very close to him. One of the Rajakars looked at us at the corner of his eye, but he didn't say anything. As we left, the 2 Rajakars behind all of us gave out long sighs of relief. The second team was still left. The second team was still a little ahead. There was 2 militia dressed in black, along with the 2 Rajakars there. The militia had looked frightening. High foreheads, high jaws, sharp noses. Somehow they looked cruel. As we walked by, one of the Rajakars said, "Hey kid, where are you going?" We had decided from before that if we were asked anything, then instead of everyone talking at once, only one person would answer. So Ashraf bounced the ball and said to play football. The Rajakar said to others, "Look at what the Shalas want to do. They're going to play football in this sun." Then he looked at us and said, "You do know that you are not allowed to go through the school, don't you?" Rashid replied, "We know. We are not going to the school." We walked away and the 2 militia looked at us scornfully. If only they knew what we were carrying and what it would be used for that night. The Nur Muhammad bakery was right in front of the school. Rashid said in an hushed voice, "Go slowly, no hurry." Inside, Nur Muhammad was sitting in front of the register. When he saw us, he said, without lifting his eyes, "What do you want?" "Biscuits." "What biscuits?" "Chatni Bazaar cookies." Nur Muhammad jumped up in exactly the same way someone jumps if they poked with something hot. Rashid lowered his voice and said to us, "Secret password." Nur Muhammad raised his eyebrows. "What did you say?" "What did you say?" "Chatni Bazaar cookies." "Chatni Bazaar?" "Yes." Now Rashid lifted his shirt to reveal the belts. That worked like magic immediately. Nur Muhammad jumped to his feet saying, "Oh God, come inside." Inside. We hastily went inside. Hot air was coming out of the big stove, making bread. The sweet aroma of the bread suddenly made me hungry. Nur Muhammad still couldn't believe his eyes. He kept gulping. "Who sent you?" Rashid said seriously, "We don't have the permission to tell you." Oh, of course. "Please open the belts quickly, we don't have time." Yes, I'm opening them." Nur Muhammad bought a small knife and cut the thread and hid the belts of bullets. Was Shafiq Bhai here anywhere? I thought about asking Nur Muhammad, but in the end, I didn't. Freedom fighters weren't supposed to show curiosity. We were leaving when Ashraf said, "Wait, let me get a couple of biscuits, so that nobody will suspect anything." Ashraf took some money out of his pocket, but Nur Muhammad said, "I don't need the money, my boy. I don't need the money. Which ones do you want?" Fazlu pointed them out, big biscuits made with coconuts. Nur Muhammad opened the container and took the biscuits out and handed them to us. Eating the biscuits, we left the bakery. No one noticed us, but we weren't about to take any risks. We kept walking straight. There were Rajakars on the guard on the other side of the street. But now, what was there to fear? We took another road back to Rashid's house. tied the belts to ourselves again, and went back. This time, before we left, we had rubbed some mud onto our bodies so that it would look like we had played football. This time, we walked from the other direction, making it look like we were coming back after playing football. Who knew if the Rajakas remembered us? Even if they did, it was okay. They wouldn't suspect anything. We weren't scared the way we had been the first time. I even asked a Rajakar what time it is. He didn't reply though. Rashed told us he stole the watch from somebody, but he doesn't know how to tell the time. That's why he was not saying anything. Rashed was probably right. We took almost all of the bullets to Nur Muhammad Bakery in the 2 times that we went. For a time we met Shafiq Bhai for a few seconds. He didn't look at all like the picture you imagine of a freedom fighter. He was wearing a short lungi. He was barefoot and there was a red gamsa hanging from his neck. When he saw us, he winked and said, "Well, aren't you just little tigers?" We didn't say anything, just laughed a little. Then Shafiq Bhai came and hugged us to him one by one. If a country with little tigers like you isn't liberated, then which country will it be? When we were leaving, he said in a hushed voice, "You will remember that this is a top secret." We said we would remember. On the way back home, we realized that we were in it for the day. Some of us would get yelled at, some of us would get beaten up. We comforted ourselves. What would happen with a little scolding or beatings? Some people were getting shot for the country. I wasn't yelled at as badly as I thought I would be. Father pretended to give up on me when he heard that I went to play football in the sun and got all muddy. While I was washing my hands and feet and cleaning up, I heard father and mother talking very seriously. Mother said, "So many days, family life." Father said, "First comes people, then comes family life. If we survive, then we can do it all again." Mother said, "That's true. We can't stay like this anymore. I can't imagine what they did to Sikhdar Sahib that day. One day they will do it to me." Father looked at me out of the corner of his eyes and said, I asked, "What will they do, father?" "Nothing." Mother said, "Then that's the best. The house can stay like this. We should go while we have the chance." I asked, "What's chance?" Father said, "A chance to go to village home. Fuad Sahib is going. We'll go with him. We'll stay a few days at his village, then set out." These days I hear the buses are running again. Fuad Sahib means Oru Appa's father. Yes. Don't tell anybody, my boy. I won't. I wouldn't tell anybody even if he hadn't said anything. Now we weren't supposed to tell anybody anything. Everything had to be kept a secret. Had I told anyone that there would be a terrifying battle that night. At night, after eating, I went to bed like every other night. But I knew that tonight was not like any other night. Tonight the freedom fighters would attack the camp. Now they were slowly advancing from all around. When the darkness would get deeper, when everybody in the world was asleep, then suddenly their machine guns would roar. Bullets flying, grenades exploding, mortars, machine guns, people screaming. I started breathing rapidly, not being able to sleep. I tossed and turned on the bed. I had thought that I would stay up the whole night, but at some point, my eyes closed. I dreamt about war in my sleep and I kept jumping awake every couple of minutes. Then I would go to sleep again, then wake up a little later. Once I dreamt that Shafiq Bhai was shooting away with his machine gun and Kader was running in the midst of it all. I cried, "Kader, don't go." Kader turned his head and said, "Who is it? Who?" I cried, "Me." "Who?" "Me, Ibu." "Ibu? Where are you, Ibu?" "Right here." Kader couldn't see me. He looked around and called, "Ibu, Ibu, Ibu." And right then I woke up, and I heard someone standing underneath the window and near my bed calling softly, "Ibu, hey Ibu." I asked fearfully, "Who is it?" "Me, Rashed." "Rashed, what happened?" Rashed whispered, "Can you come out? I need to talk to you." There was no way I could go out the door without making a noise. Father or mother would wake up. I could go out bending the already weakened grill on the window, so that's how I went down. I asked, "What happened, Rashid?" "There's a problem." "What problem?" "Somebody else was supposed to go with Shafiq Bhai." "Who?" "Another freedom fighter. He couldn't go." "Why not?" "I don't know. There's some kind of problem. I think there's a lot of patrolling on the street. So I thought that I would go." "You? You? What are you gonna do?" "Help Shafiq Bhai. There's always has to be somebody else to hold the belt of bullets. Don't you know that?" I don't know. So I didn't say anything. I had started out, but when I went near the postmortem house, I thought I saw something moving inside. I shuddered. "Really?" "No, silly. How would it be real? There's nothing known as ghosts." "So then?" "I'm still scared. Will you come with me?" "Me? Leaving the house late at night and getting involved in a terrible battle is not a kid's job. It had to be at another time. I wouldn't have done it. But now was different, and I said, "Let's go." Rashid looked me at in surprise and then laughed. I said, "Why are you laughing?" "I thought you wouldn't agree, and then I wouldn't have to go either. But no one's there, no other choice, I have to go." "You really didn't want to go?" "Bhai, the whole operation depends on Shafiq Bhai. If anything happens to Shafiq Bhai, it's going to be a disaster for the freedom fighters." "Then let's go." "Let's go." We cautiously left in the darkness of the night. Rashid said he would be able to reach Nur Mohammed Bakery through all kinds of back alleys and stuff. I would never believe it if it was anybody else, but Rashid was a different matter. Rashid never said anything stupid. He said bizarre and unbelievable things, and he never said anything stupid. Shafiq Bhai was extremely surprised to see us. It was dark everywhere, so I couldn't see his face. And his voice sounded as if he were not only surprised, but he was also a little angry. He said, "Are you crazy? This isn't a kid's game." Rashid said, "If you want us to leave, we'll leave right now. We thought you would have some trouble alone." "So then you have to come?" "Can't we do anything? Didn't we make the map? Didn't we bring the ammo? What if something happens to you now? What if something happens to you? I'm here to fight." I said, "We are also here to fight. This is our country just as much as it is yours." My voice trembled as I said it. Rashid said, "You just have to tell us whether or not staying will cause any problems, and we will leave right now." Right now. Shafiq Bhai didn't say anything for a while. Then he let out a long sigh and said, "Alright, stay, come here, and let me show you a few things. If anything happens to me, you hold down the trigger until the bells are finished. Then you get out of here. You understand?" "Yes. Now come on, let me teach you some of the basics." In the middle of the night on the roof of the Nur Mohammed Bakery, Shafiq Bhai began to teach us how to use a light machine gun. The whole time we kept on whispering, but I understood that suddenly Shafiq Bhai wasn't talking to us like we were kids anymore. He was talking to us like equals. Like we were all grown up. Rashid and I suddenly grew up on that dark night. The three of us were sitting there quietly, and a little while ago there was clouds in the sky. Suddenly the clouds had vanished, and now the stars could be seen. We sat there quietly and gazed at the stars in the sky. Shafiq Bhai said, "When the shooting starts, you lie down on the ground." Alright. When the military realized that I am giving cover from here, they are going to shoot over there. They'll try to stop me. We have to finish the whole operation very quickly. We can't give them too much time. What happens if you give them too much time? They'll bring the heavy weapons, RRS or something. What's an RR? Recoilless rifle. Powerful stuff. They can even destroy buildings and tanks. How long will the fight be? Not too long. We have to finish the operation quickly, that's our hope. If we can blow away the arms depot, then we are done. What happens then? Then we move away. They'll cover us from there. Shafiq Bhai was quiet for a while before he asked, Are you scared? Yes, I feel like throwing up. Shafiq Bhai laughed softly. You're not used to staying up so late. That's why you feel like throwing up. And even if you are scared, then just don't lose your head. This is a scary thing, but being scared is normal. Just try to keep cool, and you'll see everything will be alright. We stayed quiet. Shafiq Bhai said, I was just wondering what will happen to your parents when they find out all about this. I said weakly, What's the worst that could happen? We sat quietly again. There wasn't a sound from the military camp in front of us. It looked like everyone was asleep. They didn't know what they were in for. What a horrifying fight that would take place. I whispered. Shafiq Bhai, what is it? Are you afraid? Shafiq Bhai laughed softly. Yes, Ibu, I am. Everyone is afraid when they're supposed to be. Only insane people aren't. There's nothing to be wrong. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. But you must do what you have to do anyway. And that is what is called bravery. You'll see when the battle begins, all of a sudden you won't remember that you were scared. You'll only think about what you have to do. Shooting to give the other freedom fighters cover. Right then the darkness of the night, and the silence was shattered by the roar of a machine gun. Frightened, Rashid and I put our heads down and lay down. Shafiq Bhai didn't move at all. He said slowly, Jamal. That's Jamal. The sound of the bullets could be heard again. First randomly, then continuously. There was a few big explosions. Shafiq Bhai caned his head to see. Then said, He threw a grenade pretty well. That's nobody but Rafiq. Do you see how strong he made the muscles in his arms by bowling in cricket? It's amazing how hard he threw that. A racket had started in the camp. People screaming at one another. People running around, I said. Shafiq Bhai, shoot, shoot. As late as I can. We don't want them to know our position. If they try to get on the bunker on the rooftop, I will. There's nobody on the bunker, is there? No, you are right. Rashid and I lay there with our heads down. Rashid bravely lifted his head to see once again, and then put his head down again. The sound of the shooting was deafening. Among that, I could hear people's voices. I thought I had heard someone shout, Joy Bangla. Oh, and it's been so long since I heard that slogan. Even among all the shouting and noise, I could still hear my heart and pounding and sounding like a drum. I put my head on the ground and thought, Oh God, keep us all alive, keep us all alive. Keep us all alive, keep us all alive. Shafiq Bhai said, Hey Shala, trying to get on the bunker. Now I will let you have it. I will. Right next to my ear, the machine gun roared. Rashid lifted his head and cried, Is he dead? Is he dead? I don't know. He rolled away. I can't tell if because he got shot or just he took cover. Don't get up, shoot at us now. Before Shafiq Bhai was finished talking, something whistled past our heads. And immediately there was sound of shooting. They must be shooting at us. And the bullets moved faster than sound. So we heard the sound later. I lay their head against the ground and said, Oh God, oh merciful, let us win this war and let us win this war. Shafiq Bhai kept shooting on and off. The empty cartridges were flying and the air was filling with the heavy smell of gunpowder. In the middle of it all, Rashid and I lay crouched on the ground. Rashid shouted, How is it, Shafiq Bhai? Good. Very good. Stay down and don't get up. We lay there and witnessed a terrible war, which meant one person deliberately trying to kill another person. Thinking calmly and coolly, a war which was then supposed to be, which we weren't supposed to fight, a war on which there were Pakistani military on one side, who had spent all of their lives learning one thing, how to kill other people, and on the other side boys like Shafiq Bhai who weren't supposed to be fighting, they were supposed to be studying in schools and colleges. Bullets were whistling past our heads. Bits and bricks were falling off the wall where bullets were hitting it. Things were breaking apart and collapsing all around us. In the middle of all that, we lay there with our heads down. I prayed, "Oh God, oh merciful." Then Shafiq Bhai got shot. We didn't understand. Suddenly Shafiq Bhai made a sound like he was in pain, then somehow rolled away backwards. Frightened, I called, "Shafiq Bhai, Shafiq Bhai." Shafiq Bhai didn't reply. Rashed rolled towards Shafiq Bhai. I went behind him. When we were close to him, we called, "Shafiq Bhai." Shafiq Bhai groaned and then gasped, "Go and give cover." "Cover? Yes, quickly." We understood that Shafiq Bhai was telling us to shoot. I protested, "But you." "Quickly." Rashid and I crawled towards the SMG. We held it tightly and pressed down on the trigger. Immediately, with a terrifying roar, the whole SMG started to shake like it was alive. Bullets came out like fire. A little lower to the right. Shafiq Bhai was having difficulty speaking. He breathed in and then said, "Aim for the stairs." We aimed the gun towards the stairs and held the trigger. Again, with the terrifying sound, bullets shot out of the machine gun and it kept shaking violently. When someone tried to climb the stairs, jumped away. "Stop now. Stop." We stopped. Shafiq Bhai made a weak sound. "Again. Start again." We held the trigger down again. The machine gun shook violently with a deafening roar. Bullets rained out from it. The breathtaking terror was no longer there. Not only terror. I also wasn't feeling sorrow or pain or anything. There was a strange dull feeling in my head. As if even if anything did happen, it didn't matter. Like this had never begun, and it would never end. Like our whole life was just holding down the trigger here. There had never been anything outside of this. There never would be. "Stop! Now stop!" We stopped. And right then, everything lit up in a massive explosion. We felt a rush of hot air. It seemed that the whole universe had shattered into pieces. There was another explosion as soon as our first finished. Then another and another. Shafiq Bhai said in a tired voice, "Job well done. What happened to you?" "I've been shot." "Where?" "In the leg. It ricocheted off the SMG and hit me. I'm bleeding and I can't tell I've broken a bone or not." Shafiq Bhai groaned and tried to move his leg. He couldn't. He tried to get up and he just fell down again. He made a weak sound and took a handkerchief out of his pocket and tied it firmly around his leg. Then he leaned against the wall and said in a tired voice, "What a bother." Shafiq Bhai looked, and there were still one or two explosions happening. There was fire everywhere, people running around among it, shouting and noise everywhere. Shafiq Bhai was looking out when he suddenly saw something started. He turned to us and said, "You leave right now." "Leave? Yeah, right now, quickly." "But what about you?" Shafiq Bhai said in an exasperated tone. "You don't have to worry about me. Get out of here, the military is coming, run." "But we can't just leave you." Shafiq Bhai said, "I will take my responsibility, you leave this instant. Right now." "But," Shafiq Bhai screamed, "leave, this is an order." We stood up and I couldn't think of anything else. We were in kind of a trance and there was fire everywhere. Everything seemed somehow unreal in the flames. People were screaming and running around. Somebody was holding his child up against his chest and running, and his wife right behind him. There was such frightening terror in his face. Then suddenly we froze. A team of military was running towards us, several Rajakars with them. All of them ran right by us. They were heading for Noor Muhammad's bakery. What did they know? When I reached home, the sky was beginning to lighten. There were a lot of people standing on our house's veranda. They were all watching the fire in the east, and I had thought that everybody would come running to me and ask me where I had been. But nobody asked me anything. I saw a couple of other kids running around, and the adults were talking excitedly. And everyone seemed sort of happy. When she saw me, Mother said, "Go on, Ibu. Go back to bed. The fight is over. Then I realized that father and mother didn't even know that I hadn't been home and had just come back. They thought I was home all along and had come out with everybody else at the sound of the fighting. If everything had ended well, then it couldn't have gotten much better than this. But everything had not ended well. Shafiq Bhai was lying wounded on Noor Muhammad Bakery's roof. I didn't know if he moved from there and if he had been able to hide. How could I keep such important news to myself? I wanted someone to ask me so that I could tell them, but nobody asked me. And I heard father telling Oru Appa's father, now the fighting isn't just random anymore, it seems like organized pretty well. Oru Appa's father replied, that's what it looks like. It's not so easy to attack such a big military camp and blow away a part of it, is it? Mother said, oh, who knows if any of the freedom fighters have been shot? God keep those boys alive. Oru Appa was also there with everybody else. She patted me on the head and said, did you see Ibu? How many freedom fighters fought? I stood there quietly and Oru Appa said, just what you would call amazing. I still didn't say anything. A little surprised, Oru Appa said, what is it? Why aren't you saying anything? Suddenly tears came to my eyes. Oru Appa bent down and looked at my face and she said, why is there shoot on your face? I hadn't known. It must have been the machine gun's powder. I tried to wipe it away, and Oru Appa wiped my face with the end of her sari and suddenly noticed my eyes was filled with tears. She said in surprise, what is it, Ibu? Why are you crying? I tried to stop crying. Oru Appa suddenly suspected something. She looked at me sharply for a while and then took my hand and led me off to one side. Then she lowered her voice and asked, did you run away from home again? I didn't say anything. Did you see the fight from up close? I lowered my head and suddenly Oru Appa asked in a voice filled with fear, did anything happen to anyone in the fight? I stayed quiet. Oru Appa cried out, Shafiq, did anything happen to Shafiq? I couldn't say a word. Tears streamed out of my eyes. Oru Appa moved away a step and held on the wall and composed herself. Everyone was standing on the veranda and watching the sky. It looked like the red fire would touch the sky and the freedom fighters' fire. Nobody knew that Oru Appa's world had crumbled apart with that fire. Around 10, someone went around with a mic announcing that the town was peaceful and there was nothing to fear. The gallant Pakistani army had executed the miscreants that had come, and that's not all. They had caught someone alive. That wounded miscreant would be taken to Idgah for attempting to break the world's largest Islamic country in the world. This Indian agent would be given an exemplary punishment. The Peace Committee's chairman Ashraf Ali had called everyone to be present at the Idgah to witness this punishment. Listening to the announcement on the mic, I started to shake. By miscreant and Indian agent, they meant Shafiq Bhai. Shafiq Bhai couldn't escape from Noor Muhammad's bakery and the military had caught him. Now all of the people in the Peace Committee would kill him together. Would they kill him? Would they kill Shafiq Bhai? My whole body started to seize up before and I knew what was happening. I violently thread up. Mother ran over and held me. What happened all of a sudden? What happened? I looked at mother and said, the Peace Committee people are going to kill Shafiq Bhai. What are you saying? Yes, mother, Shafiq Bhai was shot in the fight last night. How do you know? I began to sob. Mother held me tightly against her and sat there quietly. She said slowly, oh God, what have you done? God. Rashed came around 11. He had stopped by the Idgah. There was a long noose hanging from a tree there. The place was surrounded by Rajakars and Ashraf Ali had arrived. When they thought they brought Shafiq Bhai, he would be hanged, I asked. Won't the freedom fighters try to save Shafiq Bhai? I don't know. I'm sure they will. But how? Then, I bet the freedom fighters assume that some of them will die like this. Rashed said hopelessly, I don't know. We sat there quietly. Rashed said slowly, do you know what I did? What? I told the people who had gone to see the fun that it's rumored that there's a suicide squad of freedom fighters there. There's going to be terrible fighting. They will die themselves and kill everyone else too. You made that up? No, I didn't make it all up. Then Rashed shook his head and said, "Don't ask me. But you know what? When the news reached the peace committee, they suddenly got scared and people are moving away. And what does that mean, that they will kill Shafiq Bhai now? I don't know." Right then, another man went by on a rickshaw, announcing something on the mic. The announcement was, "Due to unavoidable circumstances, the exemplary punishment has been delayed. Everybody was requested not to go to the Eidgah. A new time would be announced shortly." Rashed looked at me and laughed weakly. I guess my news worked. Shafiq Bhai is alive for now. But for how long? I don't know. All day helicopters kept coming to our town. There must have been a lot of dead and injured military, and the helicopters were taking them away, the badly wounded military. No one was being allowed to go to the rail station. A special train had come with a lot of military on it. Dead bodies were being taken on the train by stretchers. When they blew away the arms depot, they also blew a part of our school, the library, where there had been so many good books. 2 days later, we heard that Shafiq Bhai was still alive. Not only was he alive, he had also admitted to the government hospital. The peace committee and the Rajakars wanted to kill him right away, but the Pakistani military wanted to keep him alive so that they could get information out of him. They were going to torture him to make him talk. And before torturing someone, he had to be perfectly healthy. Word had it that nobody knew the most horrible torture methods better than the Pakistani military. Putting people into water head first with their feet tied with a rope, putting hot needles under their nails and ripping their nails off, hanging them or whipping them, and all kinds of other things. Rashed and I went a few days and wandered around the government hospital. Once we even went inside. There were 2 police and Rajakars sitting in front of the room. In the corner, when we bravely asked who was inside, they shouted us and shooed us away. But we asked around for a while and figured that Shafiq Bhai was in the room. He was better than before. He could walk with a limp. He was being given really good medicines to make him well as soon as possible. Within a few days, he would be taken to the camp and tortured. Then he would be killed. Usually people died while they were being tortured, and they didn't have to be killed again. We became very upset when we heard all of this. The next day we were all still upset. When one person is upset, everybody else becomes upset too. So when Ashraf said that it would be better if Shafiq Bhai had just died in the battle, then we became even more upset. Fazlu was about to say something even more upsetting when Rashed interrupted him. How about if we rescue Shafiq Bhai? The 3 of us jumped up and startled. We said, "What did you say?" How about if we rescue Shafiq Bhai? Rescue? Fazlu couldn't finish his sentence. Yes, Rashed lowered his voice. They are going to take Shafiq Bhai to the camp any day now. Once they do that, he's finished. If we are going to rescue him, we have to do it now. But Ashraf stuttered. But what? Is it so easy? Police and Rajakars are on guard 24 hours. Shafiq Bhai can't walk. How are we going to rescue him? Where will you keep him? Rashed frowned. I have a plan. Listen to it first and think about it. It's an extremely dangerous plan, but it might work. It involves the 4 of us. The 4 of us? Yes. The plan depends on 2 things. 1, if the doctor at the government hospital is Joy Bangla or not. 2, a stun gun. A stun gun? Yes. The second thing is taken care of. What? I asked in surprise. What did you say? I have a stun gun. The freedom fighters gave it to me to hide, not to use. But if I need to use it in my judgment, then I will. Rashed stopped and then went on. I have doubts about the first thing, but now I don't. The government hospital Dr. Sirajul Karim is completely Joy Bangla. He secretly treats wounded freedom fighters in the hospital. I got this confirmed yesterday. From where? Don't ask. You don't need to know. We remember that it was not right to show curiosity in something that we did not need to know. Ashraf said, "First, tell us the plan, let's hear it." "It's very dangerous. We might get killed. Or what? Or if things get complicated, a couple of Rajakars might get shot by a stun gun. But I don't want that." I shook my head. "No, neither do we. First, tell us the plan. Then listen. Other than the stun gun, we need a small pair of scissors, a few letters, and a bandage." I frowned. "Bandage? Scissors? What are you talking about?" "Then listen." Rashid told us his plan. After hearing it, our jaws dropped open. We hadn't had the slightest idea that Rashid was so smart. When he grew up there, no doubt he would be an Einstein or Nasiruddin Hodja. Fazluk rapped him on the back and exclaimed, "First class." "What do you think? Will it work?" Ashraf said, 1,000 times. "Then everyone has to promise right now that they won't tell anyone." We said in unison, "We won't." Then the four of us put our hands together and vowed that we would save Shafiq Bhai. Dr. Shirajul Karim's house was attached to the hospital. It may have been made in such a way that if he could be taken to the hospital quickly. He wasn't too old, he was a little plump, and the hair on the front of his head was thinning a little. He had 2 kids. The next morning we went to see him. It was the first thing to be done in the plan. First, we had decided that all 4 of us would go. But the Rashid only said that one of us should go. So then we decided that Ashraf should go, but Ashraf didn't agree. He said that last year, Dr. Shirajullah Karim had treated him for a small chicken pox and might recognize him. So everyone told me to go. I didn't want to go at all, but somebody had to. So I agreed. I practiced what I had to say and how I had to say it a few times, then went to the doctor's house. When the doctor saw me, he said, "Whom do you want, my boy?" "You." "Me?" "Yes." "Doctor uncle, I've come to see you on an important business." "What?" "I have to tell you secretly." "Secretly?" The doctor looked at me in surprise. "What does a little boy kid like you have to say that's so secret?" "There's something." "Then come on inside." I went inside with him. We went to the room and he closed the door behind us. He sat down in a chair and said to me, "Go ahead." I swallowed and said, "Shafiq Bhai from our neighborhood is a freedom fighter. He was shot in the day by the military camp was attacked." Dr. Shahib frowned at me and taken aback. "Now Shafiq Bhai is in hospital." Dr. Shahib didn't say anything and I continued. "We want to rescue him. We need your help for that." Dr. Shahib said angrily, "Little kids should act like little kids. Life is not so easy. Life is not an adventure book. Go home and play. Go." "Please listen to what I have to say." "No, I won't." I said desperately, "We helped in the attack on the military camp. We took the ammo to them. The freedom fighters stay in touch with us. We have arms. If we need to take the arms to them, I don't want to hear anything. Go home. Just listen to how we want to do it. No. If they want to take Shafiq Bhai to the military camp, then they will inhumanly torture him to death. Inhuman torture." Dr. Shahib stopped me and said, "Don't play with fire. Go home. I have a lot to do." Dr. Shahib stood up and so did I. I was almost crying with anger and disappointment. I stopped my tears and tried one last time. "Doctor uncle, now a time has come which has never come before. No one quite knows what to do now. Just because you are grown up and we aren't, doesn't mean you know more than we do." Dr. Uncle was a bit startled. I said again, "Just because we are young doesn't mean we don't understand anything. You were also young once." I paused for my breath and then said, "If we don't do anything, then they will kill Shafiq Bhai today or tomorrow. We have to save him now. If you help, it will be easier. If you don't, it will be a lot harder. That's the only difference." I was leaving when Dr. Shahib stopped me. "Wait a minute. I turned and said, "Let me hear your plan." I explained the plan to him. Truth to tell, he listened to it all with and started to laugh a little near the end. He asked, "Whose idea is this?" "We have a friend. His name is..." Almost about to say his name, I stopped. I shook my head and said, "But I can't tell you his name. I don't have the permission to." Dr. Sahib widened his eyes. "You don't have the permission?" "No. We don't tell anybody anything that isn't absolutely necessary." "That's not bad." Dr. Uncle paused and then said, "I just want to know one more thing." "What?" "Suppose you get caught. Then they will beat you up and say who was with you. What will you say?" "You say that Dr. Uncle was." "And then what?" "You're just kids. They'll probably beat you up and let you go. But what about me?" "They'll shoot me on the riverbank. My body will float on the river and get eaten in 2 days by dogs and foxes and vultures. I have 2 children and a wife. They'll get kicked out of the house onto the street. Am I right?" I frantically shook my head. "If we get caught, we'll never say your name. Never. You don't know what torture is. You don't know how people are tortured. If you get caught, not only you, your father will also tell them everything. You cannot even begin to imagine what will happen when the Shafiq boy is taken to the camp. Do you understand? I would like to give him a lethal injection. Do him a favor." "But you don't have to do that. We will." "That's what you think." I heard it all. Uncle laughed mysteriously, and I said, "I don't agree." I had thought that I had convinced him, but he backed out again. I stammered, but... "Do you know what adults do when kids act crazy?" "What?" "They scold them. If need be, they grab them by the neck and throw them out. Now I'm going to grab you by the neck and throw you out." Dr. Sahib laughed a little and patted me on the back. He said kindly, "Get out of the house." I should get out of the house? Yes. Get out of the house. I dumbly left the house. No one had ever kicked me out of the house before. This was the first time. Dr. Sahib had kicked me out of his house, but he hadn't humiliated me as much as he should have. There had been no anger or scorn in his voice. He hadn't spoken forcefully. He had just said a few words as if they were only saying because he had to. I walked along absent-mindedly. When I came near the tea shop, Rashid, Fazlu and Ashraf joined me. Ashraf lowered his voice and said, "What did he say?" I didn't quite get it. You didn't get what? I think I have almost had him convinced, but once I had said everything he said, "I don't agree." He said that? Yes. Then he said, "Now I will grab you by the neck and throw you out of the house." Grab you by the neck? Yes, and then he patted me on the back and kicked me out pretty nicely. He didn't say anything angrily, even once. Rashid said darkly, "But I thought Dr. Sahib was on Joy Bangla's side." Yes, he is, but he doesn't want to get involved in any of the plans with kids like us. He was scared. Rashid, face tight, said determinedly, "If we don't do anything, they'll kill Shafiq Bhai anyway. We have to try. Without the Dr. Sahib, when he sees that we have done something without him, he won't have a choice." We nodded. Ashraf said, "We have to check out the hospital one last time in case we have to make any changes." Yes, Rashid said. "There's no point in all of us going. Two of us is enough. Ibu and me will go. You guys wait here." Okay. Rashid and I followed a girl into the hospital. The hospital smelled of phenyl inside. From somewhere, patient screams could be heard. Shafiq Bhai's room was off on one side. A Rajakar was sitting and smoking outside of it. We didn't go there. On the other side, near the door, was a table with an empty stretcher on top of it. I was a little puzzled. Our plan required a stretcher, which I had told Dr. Sahib. He hadn't agreed with us, but he still arranged the stretcher. I quickly walked past the corridor into another room. In the room were rows and rows of beds, among which one bed near the empty wall was empty. Just like I thought, I had told Dr. Uncle. I grabbed Rashid. "Rashid!" "What?" Doctor uncle arranged everything for us. Look at that empty bed. The stretcher. But how? Didn't he tell he didn't agree? Suddenly I understood everything I said. Don't you understand? If we get caught, no one will believe that Dr. Sahib was with us. Why not? Remember, he told me he didn't agree. Not only that, he even threw me out of the house. But the stretcher? The empty bed? Can't there be the stretcher in the hospital? Could then there be an empty bed? Rashed looked at me and laughed in delight. Then we had nothing to worry about. No. In the afternoon, we all went home to shower and eat. No one would have the slightest idea by looking at us that we were about to do something so incredible. Something could go wrong. Something could. Someone could die. But I removed all of these thoughts, and at the dining table, Mother said to me, "What's wrong, Ibu? Why are you so quiet?" "No, nothing." "You don't know that we are leaving. When?" "Oh, tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Farhad Sahib, Oru's father, arranged a boat today." "Oh? Do you know anything what's going on? Anything about what? How Shafiq Bhai is or anything?" "He can walk a little." My voice trembled as I said, "They're going to take him to the camp any day now." Mother gave a sigh and looked away. Around 5, I left home. I had a couple of storybooks with me, none of which had my name on them. I'd written Nonsen's name inside those, and I went first to Fazlu's house, then to Fazlu's to Ashraf's house, and Ashraf came out with a ball. Fazlu and I were barefoot. Ashraf was wearing a pair of tennis shoes. We ran better barefoot, but Ashraf claimed that he couldn't run without his tennis shoes. We were all wearing two different shirts, one on top of another, and if we took off the shirt on the top of them, then the one on the bottom would be seen. It was pretty warm that day, and wearing two shirts, we felt like we were boiling. Besides the shirts, there was something else in our pockets: handkerchiefs. We had knotted the two ends and made them like tubes so that we could slip on the masks. There were 2 holes in our handkerchiefs for our eyes, so that we put them on and we wouldn't have any trouble seeing. I had it on at home in front of the mirror. It looked hideous, but our faces would be covered. We laughed at the tea shop near the hospital. I looked at Ashraf and Fazlu and attempted a laugh. I didn't think it would work out too well, though. Rashed wasn't with us. He would bring the stun gun and meet us directly at the hospital. Ashraf said, "Then let's separate now." Yes. We looked at one another. I had a weird feeling in my stomach. Like how you feel right before you get questions in your final exams. Fazlu, his face thin, said, "I'm a little scared." I said, "You could very well be. Do you think everything will be alright?" "Of course." Ashraf slapped himself on the chest and said, "I prayed 2 rakats of Nafal prayers." I said to Ashraf, "Give me your ball." Ashraf handed me the ball and I said, "See you at the battlefield." Ashraf handed me the ball and I said, "See you at the battlefield." Fazlu tried to smile. Ashraf didn't say anything. I walked along the road to the hospital with my books, and Ashraf's ball, the big road, passed in front of the hospital. On the other side of it was the lake. Next to the road, passed in front of the hospital. On the other side of it was the lake. Next to the lake was a graveyard. It wasn't the smartest idea to keep a graveyard so close to a hospital. It's probably had some kind of effect on the patients, but it worked out pretty nicely in our plan. The graveyard was very old. The walls had broken down in places and was covered by trees and leaves. It was creepy even in daytime. There were slums on the other side of the graveyard, and a few laborers lived there in small huts. On the other side of the road was leading to the river. I leaned against the graveyard wall, and when I was sure nobody was there and no one was noticing me, I dropped the ball and the books, and this was a part of our plan. With my work at the graveyard finished, I went back to the hospital. There was no point in coming so early, so I wandered around, and exactly at 10 minutes to 6, I went into the hospital. Instead of going in alone, I went in with a group of people so it would look like I had come with them. Inside the hospital, I found the listless patient, large ward, and sat next to him. As I had come to visit him, I saw Dr. Sahib was there. He was checking the patients. He saw me, but it didn't look like as if he recognized me. After a while, I saw Fazlu in the corner. Had come in with another group of people. I saw Ashraf as well. Walking along the corridor, he must be waiting somewhere downstairs. I didn't see Rashed. He had the stun gun. He was the most important person. If for any reason he didn't come, then the whole plan would be ruined, and I sat there and waited. People were coming and going, but neither of them noticed Fazlu or me. A little later, when catastrophe would break out, then everybody would catch wide-eyed. Finally, I saw Rashed come in. He was holding a bag with some bananas in it. Surely the stun gun was underneath them. Rashed came in and walked away, not looking as if he knew us. I sat there, hardly being able to breathe. A few more minutes, and then would come the terrifying moment. What would happen then? Would we be able to save Shafiq Bhai? Would everything really work out as planned? Would there be any fighting? Would anybody die today? Would we? Would the Rajakars? Now there was no point in wondering about it. What would happen? Would happen. And we would just do what we had to do. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I would suffocate. I was sitting there with my ears cocked, and right then the clock struck 6 on the gong. I finally stood up. I saw Fazlu stand up as well. I didn't know where Ashraf and Fazlu were, but wherever they were, they must be standing up too. I said to myself, "Oh God, please let everything end well." I walked calmly out of the room. Now we had to walk down the corridor and reach Shafiq Bhai's room in 10 seconds. There was no need to rush. 10 seconds was plenty. I counted mentally 1001, 1002, 1003. Without looking, I could tell Fazlu was walking next to me. As we went down the corridor, we immediately saw Shafiq's Bhai room. In front of the room, the Rajakar's back was to us. There was nobody with him. At the time, the 2 police left and came back a little later at that night. That was why we had chosen this time. The Rajakar's back was to us, which meant me and Fazlu had to jump in front of him. Blood rushed to my chest in excitement. Up ahead, I suddenly saw Rashed and Ashraf. Rashed's hand was inside the bag, which meant that he must be holding the stun gun. So Fazlu and I went forward a little. Rashed and Ashraf went forward a little. I looked at Fazlu and Fazlu looked at me. Then the 2 of us ran forward and leaped on top of the Rajakar. He tumbled off his chair onto the ground. He was holding the rifle. Fazlu snatched it away from him, and I kicked him with all the might in his head. Before I could kick him again, Rashed put out his stun gun and was saying viciously, "Come here, close your eyes, you son of a pig." The Rajakar closed his eyes. "Get inside the room, don't you dare, get up. If you try to do anything funny, I'll shoot." Rashed looked like he would really shoot if he needed to. The Rajakar crawled with his eyes closed and into Shafiq Bhai's room. He was shaking with fear. Rashed put on his mask and stood by the door, then shot the window glass a couple of times. The glass shattered with tremendous noise. With the noise of the bullets and the smoke of the place became somehow frightening. Rashed shouted out, "This is a commando attack. Don't come close. There's 1 platoon of freedom fighters here to save an injured fighter, and to finish off the Rajakars, nobody come close." People peeked at us from the places in the hospital, but nobody came near us. It sounded like a few people were rushing to hide in the next ward. We knew there was a few wounded Rajakars in the hospital as well. We had our jobs divided and we quickly began to work. Fazlu tied the Rajakar's hands firmly behind his back and covered his eyes with a handkerchief and held the rifle against his back. Ashraf covered his face and his handkerchief and went to get the stretcher. Rashed stood on guard with a stun gun. Wearing any mask, I ran to Shafiq Bhai's bed. He had a long beard and long hair, and he looked sort of a young version of Rabindranath. Shafiq Bhai stared at me in surprise and disbelief on his face. I said in a heavy voice, "Comrade Shafiq, a special commando team of freedom fighters has come to save you." "Me?" "Yes. Outside there are 2 motorcycles at the river. There is a speedboat." I suddenly lowered my voice and said, "I will explain you later, just come on now." Ashraf brought the stretcher and we lay Shafiq Bhai down on it and covered him with a sheet. The four of us grabbed the four ends of the and went out. Shafiq Bhai had never been fat and now he had almost lost more weight. The hospital's patients, nurses and doctors were coming to see. If we had been the military, then we would have been scared, but freedom fighters were their own people. So what was to fear? Rashed threatened, "Nobody come close. We have to go to the second team right now." People still came close and curiosity was a powerful thing. We continued to run and up ahead was a small corridor. We went there and we put down the stretcher. Rashed ran up ahead. People were still crowding around. We needed some time to explain everything to Shafiq Bhai. If there was a crowd like this, then it would be difficult. Rashed leaped forward with a terrifying scream, lifted his stun gun and began to shoot. Something shattered. With all the smoke and shooting people running around, the situation turned terrifying in a moment. Curious people got frightened and moved away, and then we immediately began our work. Before anyone could see what we pulled, Shafiq Bhai in a small room full of junk, which we had decided on before. I handed him a shirt and a small packet and whispered, "Put on the shirt. There are scissors in the packet. Cut off your beard and go and lie on the third bed in the ward. The bed is empty for you." Shafiq Bhai didn't understand anything he said in surprise. "I thought you were going to rescue me. Everyone will now think that we rescued you and took you away. But actually you'll stay here. Your wounded Rajakar Salamat Ali. There are a few letters from the villagers in your pocket. If you have time, then tie a bandage to your arm, like you have been shot in the arm." A sudden smile lit up in Shafiq Bhai's face. He clapped me on the back and said, "You little rascals." I smiled with all of my teeth showing, but Shafiq Bhai didn't see it since my face was covered with the mask. Besides, my heart was pounding in excitement until I could cover the stretcher in a sheet and get you out of there. Neither Shafiq Bhai nor us were safe. As soon as I came out of the small room, Fazlu said, "I checked everything out ahead. It's all okay. Then let's go." We ran with the stretcher covered in a sheet. Shafiq Bhai's pillow and the Rajakar's rifle were on the stretcher. If anyone noticed carefully, then we might be able to tell nobody was there. But nobody would get the chance to look at us carefully. By now it was dark outside. We would run and hide in the graveyard now. Outside the hospital, we carefully descended the steps, and on the road we looked back once and then turned and kept running. To make it believable, we put the stretcher down once and changed hands. Some people had come close to us, so Rashed suddenly aimed at the sky and let off a few rounds from the stun gun. The people backed away immediately. No one dared to come near us then. They just watched us from the distance. We kept running as fast as we could. Just a little further, we would reach the graveyard. Suddenly something whistled past my ear and I almost heard the sound of shooting. "They're shooting at us." "Don't stop." Nobody stopped. We kept running as fast as we could. A few more steps and we would have entered the graveyard. A few more bullets whistled around us, and amidst that we went into the graveyard. Rashed put the stretcher down and asked, panting, "Is everyone okay?" "Yes." "Very good. Everyone change and get ready to go." We took off the mask and we opened our shirts to reveal the bottom ones. Then we picked up the books and the ball we had left behind and divided them among us and then ran to the other side of the graveyard. It was dark and eerie, but for the first time none of us worried about ghosts. On the other side of the graveyard were slums. Where they saw us coming out of the darkness, a few people came towards us. They asked, "What is it?" We had come out separately. I was with Ashraf and I couldn't think of anything to say. I just said the truth. Lies were always supposed to be close to the truth. I said freedom fighters. Freedom fighters? Yes, they are scary, so many weapons. The people said to one another, "Have the freedom fighters come then?" One of them looked at me and said, "There's nothing to fear from the freedom fighters. Freedom fighters are our own people, and it's the military you should be scared of." The others nodded. Yes, the military and the Rajakars. Ashraf said, "What if a fight starts? I'm scared." "Don't be scared. Keep your head down and lie on the ground." I said, "Let's go home." They nodded their heads. "Yes, let's go home. It's not a good idea to stay out after dark." Ashraf and I quickly left. It wouldn't be a good idea to stay here when the people who had been shooting at us started to search. We reached home in 10 minutes. While we were going by rickshaw, we saw Rashid and Fazlu in another rickshaw, flying by with a young and strong rickshaw puller. This meant all of us had come back safely. This meant we had saved Shafiq Bhai, and he would go around perfectly healthy right under the hospital military's nose. At night, at the dinner table, Father said to Mother, "The freedom fighters have done another operation." "Is that so?" "Yes. It's believable, unbelievable. The hospital was full of Rajagars and military police, and in the middle of that, a commando team of freedom fighters appeared." "Really?" "Yes. There was a tremendous fighting, 6 or 7 military killed." "Then do you know what happened?" "What?" "Father said why died. They rescued Shafiq." "Really?" Mother looked at me and said, "Did you hear that, Ibu? Your Shafiq Bhai has been saved." I pretended to be shocked and delighted. Mother asked, "How did they do it? Where did they take him?" Father shook his head and said, "Nobody knows. They vanished like magic." Mother shook her head in disbelief. How brave they are. Father continued seriously, "Very organized. Apparently they even have little kids on their team. Ibu's size." "Really?" "Yes. First they threw a grenade in and then ran away. They pull the pin out of their teeth and throw it like this." Father showed it with his hands how to throw a grenade. Mother shook her head and murmured, "Oh, how brave." Father said, "Now only if they can get away, a huge military team is out. They're searching the place very thoroughly. After all, their prestige is at stake. Just pray that they can get out there in time." "I'm always praying." Father looked at me and asked, "Do you know anything Ibu?" I choked on my food and spurred, "No." "Your friend Rashid must know. He's a mobile newspaper." Father laughed out loud. He was in a good mood that day. I nodded. "When he comes tomorrow, I'll ask him." A few days later, we left town. First Fazlu and all left. He left very suddenly. He didn't even have the chance to meet us before he left. Then Ashraf left. His father took everyone to Dhaka. Apparently Dhaka city was the safest place to be then. Then came the day for us to go. 2 boats had been arranged and we would have to go with Oruapa and all into the village. Before we left, I went through a lot of trouble to go and visit Rashid. News had spread in the town and the freedom fighters had little kids on their team, so father wouldn't let me leave the house. When Rashid heard that I was also leaving, he got very upset. He asked me, "You're really leaving?" "Yes. Father doesn't want me to stay anymore. Staying close to the military camp is frightening." Rashid sighed and said, "Then I have to do everything alone." "What are you going to do?" "I don't have the permission." Rashid laughed. He said, "There's no problem with telling you. You and me are in the same team." Then he lowered his voice. "We are going to blow up the bridge on the river. Frogmen are here with limpet mines." "Frogmen?" "Yes. People who swim in rivers with flippers like frogs on their feet." "Really?" "Yes. The day and date have been decided too, but nobody knows what they are. There's going to be a big fight in Kamalganj. Then they're going to open a permanent front here. They want to make sure that no supplies can go from then. Before then." "Really?" "Yes. You know what I said to do?" "What?" "Not to blow up the bridge yet. When there's a military train on the bridge, then it will go boom." Rashid showed me how the bridge would blow with his own hands. I lowered my voice and said, "But how will you know it's a military train if you blow up a passenger train by mistake?" "No. We definitely can't do that." Rashid shook his head. "Suppose a battle begins in Kamalganj. Then a train with military and arms will definitely go there. Then suppose one of us is at the station and we see the train leave. And we send the news. Then when it's on the bridge, boom." Rashid blew the bridge up with his hands again. "How will you send the news?" "Haven't decided yet. If it's daytime, then with a mirror. If it's cloudy day," Rashid laughed a little and said, "We'll think about it and figure something out. Don't you remember how we saved Shafiq Bhai? Both of us started to laughing and pushing each other around as we remembered the incident. I lowered my voice and asked, "How is Shafiq Bhai now?" "Good. He reached the border by now. He didn't have the courage to stay in the hospital. The next morning he left on a rickshaw right in front of everybody." Rashid and I laughed again in delight. Rashid stopped laughing and said, "It would be good if you stayed here. Everybody's leaving, now I'm all alone." Rashid sighed and looked at me sadly. I said, "I don't want to go either, but what can I do? It's a big problem being young. We have to listen to the grown-ups." "That's true." Rashid and I talked for a long time. We walked along the road and then turned back again. Then Rashid took me to a tea stop and treated me to a tree with heavy cream. On the way back, Rashid grabbed my hand and said a little hesitantly, "Will you be my friend?" A little surprised, I replied, "Why? Aren't I a friend already? No, I mean my best friend. Friends forever. A friend who can be there even if you die. Will you?" I nodded, "I will." Rashid smiled happily then. He whispered, "I don't have any best friends. I mean, I didn't before. I really needed a friend I can tell everything to. Everything like. There's so much to say. Do you know anything about me? Who I am, what my father is, and what he does? Do you know anything?" I shook my head, "No, I don't." Sometimes I had been curious, but I never asked Rashid. Rashid laughed out a little and said, "Now since you're my best friend, I'll tell you everything someday. These days I'm just scared that one of us will die." "That's true." Rashid suddenly looked at my face and asked, "If I die, then will you remember me?" I don't know why Rashid said that, but I felt a sudden lurch in my chest. I grabbed his hand and said, "Oh silly, why should you die?" Rashid nodded and said, "Yeah, it's not right to talk about dying." We were so small, we still had to worry about staying alive and dying. We set out early in the morning. Oruap and all of us divided among the two boats. The two boats went along, almost touching the riverbank. Sometimes a military gunboat would appear, then we would have to hide by going into the nearby gully. The two boats went along very close together. In the afternoon, the boat stopped and the food was cooked. Strange food. Egg broken into lentil, but not bad to eat. But then again, when you're hungry, anything tastes good. We had just been sitting there in the boats all day, but I was starving. In the afternoon, the boats left again. After waiting for 2 hours or so, afternoon became evening, evening became night. I sat on the boat's roof and watched the sky. There was a strange calm silence all around. The sound of the water splashing was there, but after a while I stopped hearing it. It was as if there wasn't any sound anywhere. The stars had come out, thousands of stars. I gazed at them with surprise. Each star, with a million and millions of miles away from the earth. The universe was so huge, and in it the earth was so tiny. In this tiny world, we could not live in our own home, in our own country. They would chase us from one place to the other like we were animals. The two boats left the big river and went into a smaller one. The boatman said lightly, "Nothing to fear now." Oruapa asked from the inside of the boat, "What isn't there to fear?" "Is Joy Bangla here? Is the Neel gang? Gunboats don't come to the Neel gang." "Why not? This place is Joy Bangla." "Ha ha ha." The boatman laughed. "How much longer will it take?" "Quite a while, dear. Not before early morning." Oruapa came out from the inside of the boat and said, "Oh, how lovely." When she saw me on the roof, she said, "Well, you're sitting there like a stork. Move, give me room. I want to sit there too." I made a room. Oruapa sat next to me and said, "Careful, don't fall." "Why would I fall? Are you falling?" "I'm an old girl. Why should I fall? I'm telling you since you're a kid." "You think we can do anything because we're kids?" Oruapa understood the indigence in my voice and hugged me. "Alright, I won't say it anymore. You're not kids anymore, you're grown up." Oruapa pretended to make a speech. In the year of 1971, in a battle for liberation, these children's innocence was snatched away from them. Oruapa was joking, but I thought there was some truth in what she was saying. It was true for me. It was true for Rashid and me. was true for Fazlu and Ashraf. The two of us sat there quietly for a while. At some point, Oruapa lowered her voice and asked, "Do you know any news of Shafiq Bhai? Where is he now?" I didn't say anything. Oruapa looked at me. "You know something, don't you?" I stayed quiet. Oruapa said again, "Tell me where he is, how he is, who rescued him and where they took him. Tell me." "Top secret. I don't have the permission to say." "Please tell me. I won't tell anybody. Here I am touching you and saying it." "What happens if you touch me and say it?" "I think you start to itch." "Quit it. Swear on God." "I swear on God." "You won't tell anyone?" "I won't tell anyone." I hid a laugh and said, "First tell me who rescued Shafiq Bhai from the hospital." "A suicide squad of freedom fighters, a specially trained commando unit." "How many of them were there? 16 or 17? "How did they take Shafiq Bhai away? First on a motorcycle and then by speedboat." "Was there a fight at the hospital?" "Yes, a small one." "Did anybody die?" "4 Rajakars and 2 military." I began to giggle. Oruapa asked, "What are you laughing about?" You won't tell anybody, will you?" "No, I won't." I lowered my voice and said, "We rescued Shafiq Bhai." Oruapa didn't understand what I was saying. "What did you say?" "We rescued Shafiq Bhai. Me, Rashid, Fazlu and Ashraf." "What? What?" Oruapa didn't understand. "Suicide squad, commando, that was all made up. We spread that around. Actually, it was just 4 of us." "The 4 of you? You?" "Yes." "Where did you take Shafiq? How did you do it?" "We didn't take him anywhere. We just pretended that we took him away and we ran away with an empty stretcher covered in a sheet. Shafiq Bhai hid in a small room, cut off his beard and changed his shirt and managed to lie down in an empty bed among all of the shouting and people and everything. We had arranged with Dr. Shahib that to have an empty bed ready. No one noticed." You? Oruapa couldn't understand anything else. I laughed again and said, "Rashid had a stun gun." "Stun gun?" "Rashid, such a little kid. The freedom fighters had given it to him to keep his word, so we used it. No harm done. He had to use it a couple of times just to scare people, and we couldn't do an operation like that empty-handed. When the Rajakars fell on the ground, you fought with the Rajakars." "Yes, me and Fazlu pushed the Rajakar to the ground." I explained it all to Oruapa and she listened to everything and put her hand on my head and said, You such little kids, did such a big thing. Such little kids." I said, Oruapa, at a time like this has never come before. No one knows what to do, the grown-ups don't know, neither the kids. So then we did something we thought we should do." Oruapa looked at me and said, "Wow, you've learned to talk like a grown-up." I got embarrassed. Actually, Rashid said that. Rashid always talks like grown-ups. The idea for the operation of ours was Rashid's too. "Really?" "Yes, we worked out the details, but the real idea was Rashid's. We would pretend to take Shafiq Bhai away, but we actually wouldn't." "Awesome idea." "Yeah, it's awesome." The next day, Shafiq Bhai left on a rickshaw right in front of everybody. The first night he was in town. After that, he went to the hospital near the border by the boat. Oruapa looked at me after a while and hugged me tightly. She whispered, "Do you know what a country is, O Ibu? A country is its people, with people like you who can hold the country back." Who? Oruapa was right. No one could hold the country back. The war that was supposed to last for years finished in 9 months. 10 million people like Dilip became refugees and went to India. On the streets, in forests, in swamps, there were living like animals. Not 1, not 2, but 10 million. Most countries in the world didn't have that many people. India was feeding them and educating them. But how long could they do that? Finally, India declared war on Pakistan and came forward. The Indian military came on the freedom fighters' side. We thought there would be fierce fighting then, but nothing done. Nothing doing. There wasn't a trace of any fighting. 100,000 Pakistani military surrendered like cowardly dogs in 2 weeks' time. I hadn't understood then, but I later did. It was very easy to shoot innocent people. The Pakistani military was very good at that. It killed 3 million people in 9 months. But real war was not so easy. 3 different things were needed for war. One was a government to plan the war, another was a military who fought with arms and ammunition, and the third was the people of the country who would support the country in the war. These 3 things were needed for any war. If anyone was missing, you would not be able to win in the war. The Pakistani military had the first 2, but not the third. All of the people in the country were against the Pakistani military, so when the Indian military sided with the freedom fighters, the Pakistani backed away and surrendered like real cowards. That was the only possible because of the people of the country. It did not matter whether they fought with arms or not. All the people were united and they were the freedom fighters. The country was liberated on the 16th of December, and we went back to our town from the village at the end of January. There were no roads or bridges or anything. When the Pakistani military saw that they didn't have a chance, they destroyed everything. Roads, bridges, factories, everything. No one could beat them at cowardice. The day we reached the town on a launch day was the 29th of January in the afternoon. When we got to our house, we were shocked. There were doors and windows, but there was nothing inside. Everything had been ransacked. Everything that was inside had been looted up and broken up. Mother wrapped her sari around her waist and started pulling things around, and I ran outside to check things out. First, I went to Fazlu's house and found Ashraf there as well. When they saw me, they ran towards me screaming, "Ibu! Ibu's here!" After we were done hugging each other, everything, I asked, "Where are you guys okay?" "Yes. Staying alive means we are okay." "Rashed, where's Rashed?" Ashraf and Fazlu kind of jumped. They looked at one another and I saw their faces had become deadly pale. Ashraf grabbed me with his both hands and said, "God, you don't know yet." "I don't know what?" Neither of them said anything. They just looked at me fearfully. "What is it? Why aren't you saying anything?" Still neither of them spoke. What had happened to Rashed? Ashraf swallowed and said, "On the 2nd of December, he got caught near the market. There were 6 grenades in his bag. Ashraf Ali and some of the Razakars took him to the river bank and stood him up. Ashraf suddenly began to sob. I wanted to scream and shatter the whole world apart. "Oh God, what have you done? What have you done?" "What?" A long time passed after that. A long time. No, I never forget Rashed. I never will forget him. I had promised him that I wouldn't. Even if I hadn't promised, I wouldn't. Was it so easy to forget a person like Rashed? When I am upset about anything, then I talk to Rashed. If I close my eyes, he comes and stands in front of me. I've grown up, but Rashed hasn't. He's still a little kid. When Rashed comes in front of me, I also become a kid again, and I say, "Hey Rashed, how is it? How are you?" "Good." "What's wrong with your hair? Looks like a bird's nest." Rashed laughs and tries to fix his hair with his fingers. No use. It just gets even messier. I say, "Shafiq Bhai's wedding, you know that?" "I know." "How do you know?" Rashed laughs. "I know everything. I get all the news." "Do you know who is marrying?" He. "Who else? Oru Appa." "Yes, I nod." "When I was little, then do you know how Oru Appa used to tease me?" "How?" "She would always say that she would marry me." Rashed chuckles again. "Go and ask her now." "Rashed, do you know what Oru Appa said?" "What?" "After she's married and has children, if she has a boy, she'll name him Rashed. Rashed Hassan." "Really?" Rashed became very happy. He asked again, "Really?" "Yes, really." "I thought I would do the same thing. But what will you do?" When I grow old and get married and have kids, I'll name my son Rashed. What do you say? Rashed laughs mischievously. You do something else. What? Name your kid Laddu. Then Rashed rolls around in laughter. A little later, I say again, Hey Rashed, what? Can I ask you something? What? When they shot you, did it hurt? Rashed becomes a little quiet. He begins to look sad. He puts his head down and says, Yes. Did it hurt a lot? A lot. He nods again. Then he says slowly, You know what's worse than pain? What? The time I realized that I was going to die. The Rajakas were standing in front of me with rifles raised. Ashraf Ali was behind them. One of them said, Sir, let him go, he's only a child. Ashraf Ali screamed, A snake's baby grows up to be a snake. Then he looked at me and said, Recite the kalmas. Then I suddenly got an empty feeling in my chest. That was the feeling. I thought, oh, the world, the skies, the rivers, the trees. I won't see any of it ever again. Never again. Never. Rashed, my voice catches. Don't say any more, it hurts. Alright, I won't. Rashed is quiet for a while before he says, but make sure it never happens again. Never. I said slowly, it won't. Rashed slowly walks away. Then, his face is hidden from me, but I know that there are tears in his eyes. Tears of sadness. Sadness because of the world. Sadness because of the people of the world. Rashed, don't cry, please.